Hello and welcome to Stream 2 of the 2022 Fantasy Wildcard Charity Streamathon. If you haven't caught us up just yet, we're discussing all 32 NFL teams from a dynasty perspective, and we're doing it to raise funds for the fantastic charity Mind. So Mind is a fantastic charity supporting people with mental health issues and facilitating improvement to their mental health. The Fantasy Wildcard team, we want to support this amazing charity, and we'd also be delighted if you could too. So if you'd like to support us, please check out our link tree on our Twitter page at Fantasy Wildcard. The website can be found on our banner at the bottom of this stream, but it is www.justgiving.com/fundraising/Fantasy Wildcard 2022. Thank you for your support. So we're now going to be moving on to hour number 5. This is our stream 2 of 4. And over the next 4 hours, we're going to be discussing the AFC and NFC East teams from a dynasty perspective. So we're in the AFC East. Matt, how are you doing as we roll into hour number 5?
Yeah, doing good. Obviously entering that second quarter now. So we've got the first quarter out of the way. It's been a lot of fun, hasn't it? I've really enjoyed it. And while we're still only early doors yet, it's going to be great. We've got some great guests coming on in this next stream. So yeah, looking forward to it.
We've certainly got a touchdown lead going into quarter number 2, but we need to press home our advantage, I think. And we've got two fantastic guests to talk about two great teams. So we're going to bring on, from the tale of two rivals, we're going to bring on Dave and we're going to bring on Todd. So lads, how you doing?
Excellent, man. Excellent.
So excited to be here with you guys. The Fantasy Wildcard is one of my all-time favorite places to hang out and talk fantasy football. You know, I love you guys. Honestly, I am so excited to be here supporting the Mind charity and talking fantasy football. This is great. So honored to be on with you guys. Loving it. Tale of Two Rivals is pumped.
Yeah, I'm thrilled about the charity you guys picked. Mental health support's very close to my heart. It's something that I work with a lot of kids that need mental health supports in my job. So this is awesome. I applaud you guys for doing this, and I'm excited to talk about two teams that are grossly improving in a division that I wish they weren't. So
that sets it up nicely. We can't wait to have you guys on. So we'll kick off the show. We're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills, one of the teams hotly tipped to win the Super Bowl coming up in 2022. Naturally, we'll start at the quarterback position. So Matt, what's your first question?
Yes, obviously Josh Allen, we've spoke about teams ascending, and this is a player that's ascending now, finds himself as the QB1 on keep trade cut in terms of his dynasty value. And to be honest, I think it's hard to disagree with that, really. Back-to-back QB1 finishes in fantasy. But I'm interested to know, to both of you guys, what would you be looking to do to cash in on him at that value? Would you maybe be looking to trade down for another quarterback and acquire other assets?
Well, for me, I just wanted to get out there because I've been historically known as a Josh Allen hater. That's changed over the last couple of years, and I just don't think there's an argument for not having him as a minimum a top 3 QB in dynasty. He's got the volume. You know, he was top 5 in pass attempts per game played in Buffalo. Was a top 3 in neutral game pass scripts and just overall pass rate over expectations. So you'd love to see volume for your quarterbacks. Pretty accurate considering how he was as a prospect and how he was the first couple of years in his career. Truly how he's reinvented his mechanics, his decision-making, taking the more, instead of going downfield, he's hitting the intermediates at a very elite, very above average to elite, good to elite rate. So I'd love to see that. And then he's just efficient. He's back-to-back top 10 EPA per play season. So, and then you got the rushing upside too that everyone knows about. So love me some Josh Allen, but honestly, I just don't see as a competitor how you can make up for the loss of Josh Allen in your lineup when you trade him back, because Kyler Murray plus the 110 which is the best trade I could find on DLF's trade finder. And that's just not getting the job done for my starting lineup and trying to compete. If I'm not competing, which is what Todd's used to doing, I would be totally cool to trading back for Derek Carr plus 2 first or Kirk Cousins and 2 first to acquire those assets and build my team. But if I'm competing right now, then I just couldn't do it.
Did you just put Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr in a trade with Josh Allen?
If I'm competing and I need to get 2-3 more.
So you're looking for 1 year we're starting quarterbacks?
Todd, look. How long does this go for? We got 3 hours, right, boys? Let's go.
We might not get past this question. That was an outrageous trade down. Oh my god. Yeah. I mean, so long story short is, I think the definition is like what trade down is. So the short answer is no. I wouldn't do it, but because Allen looks like a stud for years to come with one of the safest floors with the rushing upside. So if he were to regress a little bit with the passing, that rushing is going to keep him in that at least top 8 range. You know what I mean? So like you're not gonna like fall off a plateau with him. You know what I mean? So and I don't see getting much back in like a Kyler, Herbert, Burrow. The fact that you saw Kyler plus a first, that's surprising to me that you would get a first with Kyler, but I probably wouldn't do that. There's just not Kyler's not a guy that I'm looking to invest in right now. But the only QB I might consider trading back to would be Dak and maybe Russell Wilson. And you got to give me a stud wide receiver in that deal with Wilson for me to even consider it. So on the DLF Trade Finder, it's funny that I don't know if Dave saw this one. It was Josh Allen and Cooper Kupp for Dak, Lamb, and the 108. And I'm like taking a premier stack with one of my favorite young wide receivers and the 108, which could actually also be Kenny Pickett, which I'm not a fan of, but you know, he's got the capital. He could be a starting QB. You got to respect that. So I would do that in a scenario of any type of build I'm in, because I would consider that trade if you made it a mid-second. Like I would consider it. I don't know if I'd smash, but the first makes it a smash. So I would need a lot back for Allen. But a young wide receiver and a first with a top 12 QB is what would get me thinking about it. But I don't know if anyone would make that move, and I don't understand how that would help you, like putting all those assets into getting Josh Allen. So the short answer is no, unless you're giving me an insane offer.
Yeah, I appreciate the layup question to start us off, guys.
gotta break you in nice and easy, haven't we?
A layup question, and you'd make a move for Kirk Cousins. Like, you might not even have a job next year.
We appreciate it might still be early in the States, so we've got to start off nice and gently. Yeah. But Matt, is there any sort of deal you're looking to move off Josh Allen for, or is he that far ahead of the competition where you just want to keep him?
Yeah, I think the guys hit it perfectly, to be honest. It's hard to find any flaws really in Josh Allen. I mean, as he came in as a rookie in his early career, you'd say the one concern was that consistency, but now I feel like he's got that. He's surrounded himself with an elite offense. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. It's hard to pick any real red flags in his game. And like the guys touched upon, if you're going to move down from somebody like Josh Allen, it's going to be really hard to replace that production. And whether you're bringing in a piece on top of that, it's got to be something really big, like Todd touched upon. It's got to be something that really wows me for me to want to move off that guaranteed production from Josh Allen. And yeah, I think he's rightfully the QB one. I think it's maybe a tier in the top, maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks in terms of dynasty. But yeah, it'd be hard for me to move down from Josh Allen personally.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, all in agreement. We'll move on to someone that there's a lot of debate about, and it's the running back room, and it's James Cook, the incoming rookie. Definitely one of the more fascinating running back rooms now in the NFL for me. Do you guys like James Cook, and do you think he'll contribute in a decent way in year one, or how do you see his role playing out with the team?
All right, so for me, what James Cook is, I do like James Cook, and I think he does take over a large share of that RB share by the midseason. He's a better runner, he's more dynamic, and he's a better receiver than anybody else in that RB room. I didn't actually love the pick from a building standpoint for the Bills in the second round, but like that's not necessarily fantasy related, you know. But it was a need, and they're clearly saying that this is a guy that they want to do something with by putting the capital in there. When I invest in a running back, it's huge to me to be attached to elite offenses with good lines, and the Bills are one of the best in both of those areas. So it's draft capital, the 3-down potential, and the team situation, and the fact that the competition he has behind him has literally proven to do nothing over the last 2 to 3 years with those opportunities makes his ceiling very juicy. I just want to point out a dark horse in that backfield for me is Duke Johnson, because he's always somebody who finds his way onto the field in any situation is a good all-around back. And I think that like James Cook trying to be what Duke Johnson is in year one would be like a pretty good start. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if he stumbles coming out of the block, I could see Duke Johnson being the next guy to take over there.
So Todd also, Todd loves his Devy prospects. James Cook's got that bloodlines narrative. Todd's all about that. He's all, oh man, just, watch the tape. He's all hot and bothered for this.
Hold on. I've been so low on James Cook as a C2C player for 3 years. So stop putting words in my mouth.
All right. So I just was saying that to just deflect because, Alia, I love you. But I think it's more, I just want to say, I think it's more important for fantasy football purposes to talk about the evils of the British explorer, James Cook, and the entire age of exploration for what is done for our world today than talk about James Cook, the fantasy running back, because I think he's basically a non-zero at the fantasy position. People want to talk, people want to talk about how Georgia wants to, it's our RB room to play out this way. And, this is how they build it. They don't want to give them too much of a workload. I want people to go back and look at, and I think I've said this on Fantasy Wildcard a couple months ago. Just go back and look at Sony Michel, DeAndre Swift, Nick Chubb's production and their share of the offense, and then go look at James Cook with a magnifying glass. You might be able to find it somewhere on some sheet somewhere because it's almost non-existent. No, that workload just wasn't there to be considered a viable fantasy asset for me, at least to be he's going at 110 in some places in fantasy, in Superflex fantasy drafts. And that's just too rich for me. Honestly, and I said this last night, I was doing some research and late night, I said for this, and I said, if the worst parts of fantasy, draft capital fantasy Twitter and the worst parts of landing spot Twitter had a baby, they would be drafting James Cook because that's essentially what he is. Because I butchered that quote here because it's a lot funnier on Twitter, but how that's I'm just so excited here.
That didn't land, man.
Yeah, no, it's I would try again, but I'm trying to push on for mine, Charity, because you just gotta just roll the punches here. But
just keep going, buddy.
Anyway, I'm sorry. When a running back's best collegiate performance is 7.5 rushing attempts in his best collegiate season, I'm sorry, I just can't get behind you as a viable fantasy asset when you're in a 4.42 at 198 pounds. Like, people want to talk about, he's an explosive athlete and yada, yada, yada. Well, explosive athletes, at least for fantasy football purposes, handle the ball more than what James Cook did at Georgia. I'm sorry. I'd rather give me any of the round 3 running backs at cost compared to where James Cook is going in rookie drafts. And I'll take him a full 2 rounds later in startups than where James Cook's going right now.
Oh, in startups. I thought you were going to say rookie drafts. I was like,
no.
I couldn't agree more with the profile piece. For me, the reason I like him is it's opportunity. You know what I mean? And just like landing spot. Like for me, like I'd be having that baby. And and Dave just would put it up for adoption, I guess. So, that's just kind of the way that I feel about it. I think that's how Dave and I differ on the way we approach the running back position to a degree.
Yeah, perhaps we better move on swiftly to the wide receiver room that, especially the first guy, is someone I think we all like. So over to you, Matt.
Yeah, so Stefan Diggs, obviously the clear wide receiver one over there in Buffalo, signed that 4-year, $104 million extension this offseason after a wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 7 finish since joining the Bills. So I'm just interested to know, where does he sit in your guys' rankings? Are you as high on him? Do you have him right up there and getting up towards that top tier, or are you a little bit lower than consensus currently on Stefan Diggs?
Well, I'll just say Todd's requirements for having a top 5 dynasty wide receiver is for them to be at least 45 years old. So Stefan Diggs falls right in line there. He loves his old wide receivers. No, I'm just kidding. Todd and I are a little bit different when it comes to wide receivers, but actually Stefan Diggs is my wide receiver 10 in dynasty. He's in my second tier of wide receivers, if I remember correctly. He's just in front of Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams for me. But he's just behind Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, and Deebo Samuel. So that's all that's that tier for me. And I think there's no denying that he took a step back from a volume perspective last year. And I think his efficiency too took it decreased across the board as well, which for an older wide receiver, I mean, he's not long in the tooth by any means, but from a values on the dynasty value curve, to see some decrease in volume, decrease in efficiency is concerning. However, the big thing here is he's the wide receiver 1 for Josh Allen in the Buffalo offense. Is one of the most pass-friendly offenses in the NFL. Stefan Diggs is the clear wide receiver 1. No one's I don't see a situation where he does not have at least a 25% target share in that offense. And yeah, I think he's good. So I want the more I've been playing fantasy football, especially how the dynasty landscape is going, I want my premium assets, like Todd mentioned, attached to good offenses and good wide receivers. And that's what Stefan Diggs is.
Yeah, for me, he's my wide receiver 8. He's not old. And he's a mid-tier 2 guy for me. The 2 guys I have ahead of him in that tier are DK Metcalf and Cooper Kupp. Unfortunately, I had to move DK into tier 2 when reviewing this question. He's a tier 1 talent, but the Seattle situation is a little concerning. But some people will get irrational and overthink that situation and then put DK at like wide receiver 20 or something, which would be insane to do, right, Dave? I had
my DK hating card. It's true. It's true. He's my I moved him up for Todd. He's my wide receiver 19. But anyway,
you like how I worked that in? So I love Stefan Diggs as the wide receiver 8, man, and like tier 2. And obviously, like I obviously had Cup behind him before, but Diggs was like was probably 7 for me last year. So he's right where he is. He's steady. He gets the share. He's dynamic. He's attached to the best QB in the league. The offense is ascending. Like, how could you not love him? I traded him for peanuts to be as my wide receiver 3 in the league in Levi Valentine's league this year. And Levi, you messaged me being like, I'm really upset that you just got that deal. I was like, yeah, I want it. So I mean, I'm a big Diggs fan.
Usually those wide receivers, I like to have, if I'm investing that much money or like value into wide receiver, I like to see that be a rising asset and they're going to get better. That's not going to happen with Stefan Diggs, but he is the ultimate win now piece in fantasy. I think he's just one of the, he's relatively easy to acquire. I don't think he's, whereas a lot of the wide receivers above him are harder to acquire. Like Todd said, he come for wide receiver 3 prices. It felt like, I really like what he does for win now teams. And as Todd says, it's about the wins, baby, about them rings.
Right. And the thing about Diggs is like when you talk about win now, people think of it as like that 1-year window, like, oh, I'm going for it this year. Like you got like a 3-year window with Diggs with that move. Like, and I always advise playing by 3 years at a time in Dynasty. And because it takes at least a couple years to rebuild, and Dave likes to play like 12 years in advance. So like, you know
about spreadsheets. So who's winning?
So like 3 years at a time, man. So
I love that. And Matt, is Diggs someone that you've got a lot of in Dynasty? Or are you happy to roll with him as say your wide receiver 1?
I sadly don't have a lot of him, but like the guy said, he's a guy that you really want to have if you're contending. I mean, we've just spoken glowing terms about Josh Allen, so it's hard not to do the same when it comes to his wide receiver 1 in this offense. I feel like Stefan Diggs is safe, but he's also got that ceiling as well, given that the offense that he's in, the situation, the opportunity. He's got a little bit like we mentioned with Josh Allen. Everything just seems to have fallen into place for Stefan Diggs. The fact that he's going to be that lead guy there for at least 2-3 years, maybe even the full 4 years of his contract is really exciting. And he is that ideal win now asset that you can maybe get for a little bit undervalued, but you can really reap the rewards and get you that high ceiling as well.
Yeah, all in agreement. So we'll move on to possibly the wide receiver 2 over there and Gabriel Davis. And I do recall hearing the same argument last season that he's going to be set for a bigger role this year. Are you two guys buying into the idea that Davis is going to be a thing now that Cole Beasley's been released by the team? And what do you see his ceiling being now that Cole Beasley's not there?
I think I'm out because everyone else seems to be buying in. And if the price is right, I'm down for anyone, but I don't think the price would be right. I do think there's a high ceiling there, but I also think there's an extremely low floor. And I think people tend to ignore that. I also think people are overlooking the acquisition of Jamison Crowder. And because Jamison Crowder eats targets. And I think that he's the perfect upgrade from Beasley in that offense. That's right. I said upgrade. With that said, it wouldn't surprise me if next year they also add a significant wide receiver, probably through the draft rather than free agency. But I mean, I actually was I was in a group chat and I was talking about how people were saying how it was about Cook laying with the Bills, so that's perfect. And in the second round, which happened, right? And I said, yeah, that could very well happen, but that would not be a good move. I think it'd be better for them to add a wide receiver to that offense because it would make that offense more dynamic. And you could go get a veteran running back like a Duke Johnson to upgrade there. So, but at the same time, so that's what I think is like they're going to eventually add a piece to that. And then Gabe Davis is probably going to look in that wide receiver 3 role, which is great for them from a real football standpoint than fantasy. Side note, doesn't Julio Jones make a lot of sense here? Like just kick those tires for the Bills and see what happens. And yeah, so there you go, Dave. I worked Julio Jones in today's appearance.
I actually was just saying that a couple days ago in the chat, so that's funny you said that. Actually, no, it's like a podcast. Actually, I was talking about that. So, Todd, I hate how much we're agreeing here. This is bad news.
I'm finally rubbing off on you. You might actually start winning.
That's it. You know what? I'm trading away all of my good players. I do not want to have Todd rubbing off on me. I do not want to win. So, look. I going back to like the beginning with Gabriel Davis, I actually thought analytically he was a pretty strong prospect. He had really solid age-adjusted production, and not stupidly, but at the time when he was coming in, Josh Allen was not Josh Allen. He had not taken that big jump yet, and I was like, I don't want a day 4 or a day 3 wide receiver attached to Josh Allen. That just does not excite me at all. And things have changed a lot in 2 years. But I think it is an extremely promising development to have Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley no longer in that offense for Gabriel Davis. And I agree with Todd that Jameson Crowder is a low key, a good, like where he's going, he's a good value at late in drafts in any format, to be honest. And but I think when I'm looking at Gabriel Davis, you have to approach it from a range of outcomes because Todd really nailed it. I don't want to just parrot Todd. So he nailed it about the ceiling and the floor. But what people need to remember is that weeks 1 through 12, Diggs had like a 35%. Davis had a 35% route participation rate in weeks 1 through 12 last year. That is bad. That is like that is not even rosterable in redraft. And now all of a sudden he's one of everyone's fantasy darling this year. So because at week 13 on, Emmanuel Sanders took a step back, and then Diggs, or I want to call him Diggs. Maybe I really do like Gabriel Davis. And he really took a jump into where he was hit like over that last stretch. He almost had a 21% target share with Josh Allen. So I think realistically, you're looking at if we're just the most likely range of outcomes, anywhere from that 15 to 18% target share range, I think, which is still a bump. I think that, but on that high end, he could be up that 21% again. And we're talking mid wide receiver 2 type numbers when you're attached to Josh Allen. So I think at price where he's going as a late wide receiver 3 in dynasty drafts, you're kind of paying for the upside is there. It's not a bad price. What I'm trying to say is, but I just am not finding him because usually I've already stacked my wide receiver room there, and where Gabriel Davis is going is where I'm starting to get my RB2s. I want to have like 3 or 4 viable, like the AJ Dillons. I'm trying to build up that wide receiver 2 or that running back 2 spot. And I think realistically, you could see Crowder, McKenzie more vying for that slot duty than what Gabriel Davis's role is going to be on the outside. But there is also a thing where Crowder is taking away from those targets and stuff like that. So that's a long way of saying that, yeah, sure, Gabriel Davis is fine. Give me Pat Freiermuth. Give me Pat Freiermuth. I did that straight up in a trade.
A long way of saying everything Dave ever says.
Yes. True story.
Well, you transitioned us nicely onto the tight end position anyway. So over to you, Matt, for the question.
Yes, obviously Dawson Knox broke out last season, finishing as the tight end 8 in fantasy football. However, he did rank 18th amongst tight end in receptions and 15th in receiving yards. So I think there's one clear pointer there that it tended to be those touchdowns that got him that value and that finish of tight end 8. So he's currently going tight end 10 on keep trade cut. And I'm just wanting to know, kind of spoke about him a little bit earlier and my feelings on him, but are you guys buying or selling at that current price of tight end 10?
I'm selling big time. Overall, from from a yards per route run and a targets per route run, so from volume and efficiency, he was below anything that was sniffs fantasy value. To be honest, and Tom wants efficiency. I'll tell you the efficiency. I don't even know if he's the best tight end on that team right now. That's what I'll say. Like, give me OJ Howard at
right.
So
right. I forgot he was there. Good point.
And I'm being like, that sounds a little flippant, and because of what Dawson Knox just did. But I think OJ Howard, if you look at his efficiency numbers.
Oh,
he got that excited. He
Big
froze.
build
oh,
up.
he got lagged. That is a phenomenal freeze.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
So,
He's back.
Look, Bill's Twitter doesn't like this. When I'm talking to Dawson Knox, hey, they're like, look, we're shutting this guy down. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is no Dawson Knox. Sell.
Yeah, well, for me, I'm selling every tight end that's not named Pat Fryermuth or Mark Andrews. I'm a classic like late tight end guy. I think that position goes fluctuates so much. You know what I mean? If somebody wants to pay Kyle Pitts prices, I'll sell them all day. You know what I mean? So yeah, I the OJ Howard piece, I could easily see him beating him out. Because OJ Howard is a guy who's incredibly efficient and a better athlete, you know? So,
A full year from that injury too, Todd. A full year.
Yeah, full year from the injury. Oh, Dave, you love those injury timelines. So, yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm definitely selling. And if I can get, you know, like I would package him with a pick to try to look for like a better like wide receiver upgrade. I don't know if you can tell, but I like to build through wide receivers. So yeah, so that's probably what I've been trying to do with Knox.
Yeah, full agreement. I've got Dawson Knox in one place, and that team I've got Josh Allen. So I'm happy to have him because I didn't get any of the elite tight ends. I'm happy for that stack. But if I haven't got Josh Allen, I don't want any piece of Dawson Knox. I'm a Buccaneers fan. And I was frustrated with the usage of OJ Howard because in flashes he's shown that he can be as good as he looks like a wide receiver when he's got the ball in his hands and he's running routes. He's that big, he's that explosive. So it was frustrating that we just didn't use him how he should be used. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets used plenty this year.
Yeah, I mentioned Dawson Knox when we were talking about Cole Kmet, and I think when you get into this kind of range of tight ends, when you've gone past obviously the elite top 5, 6 or whatever you've got, I'm then looking for opportunity for these tight ends. That's what you tend to find with these top fantasy tight end. It's that opportunity, getting that chance of being one of the top 2 receiving options in that offense. And while this offense is great for Dawson Knox, we know that there's talent around him, and the fact that it was the only real production was through the touchdowns that he got. I feel somebody like Cole Kmet is somebody that can get far more receptions, far more targets, and with that just feels like the tight end you should be targeting in this range rather than somebody like a Dawson Knox. So I mentioned he was the clear standout for me as somebody to look to move away. And Ali, I don't know if you've seen in the comments, but Chevin, a guy who we've got coming up in a bit, says somebody better jump through a table on this Bill segment, and we've come to the end of the segment. So, Dave, do you want to put yourself forward? Are you gonna jump through a table for us? Or?
Look, this is a bar that I'm sitting on here. I don't know. That's a little thick.
I'm wearing a Tom Brady's Patriots jersey. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, that's why I asked Dave. I thought I better not ask Todd. It wouldn't go down.
No. I don't. Hooligans.
Todd, I just want to. We're about to talk to Jets. I just want to say, we're just the RB2 for the Jets. Todd, you can only say positive things about him moving forward, just because of that's just the rule. I'm not sure if you saw that in the fine print. We can only say positive things. We don't want to hurt any feelings here.
Correct.
Right.
All right.
On that note, we'll try and be excited about this Jets offense. So. My question's up first. We'll talk about Zach Wilson, obviously the quarterback. Obviously had a pretty grim rookie year, but now certainly more is expected in year 2. Now he's got a pretty loaded offense in front of him. Where do you guys have Wilson ranked in Dynasty right now, and what do you think his ceiling can be in 2022 with these added weapons?
So I really liked how your phrase of grim rookie year, because it was grim. It was not good. It was some really bad stats. But and just a little bit rewinding before I get into where I have him. He was my QB5 in last year's class coming out, and he just profiled extremely poorly from a numbers perspective. I know there were some things people liked about his makeup, his grit, his ability to create for himself. I know there was a lot of things people liked about him, But from a numbers point of view, I didn't think he was a very good prospect. Now that being said, I've learned over the years that it's important to have humility when you're doing these things, and you can be wrong. Surprisingly, that happens more often than I would ever think it would happen. But
Doesn't happen too often.
Yeah. Oh, Todd, look, I don't like the way you keep score, Todd. But I just want to say, so realistically, there is because of what the New York Jets are doing, there is a scenario where I think Zach Wilson can succeed. I just don't see it happening in a lot of his range of outcomes. I just don't see that Zach Wilson hitting. He's my QB 22 in Dynasty in my 5th tier. I have Matt Corral one spot behind him. Give me Matt Corral at price every single time over Zach Wilson. I think what we've seen the Jets do, they've gone all in on offense. I think the only thing they haven't really done is upgrade that offensive line enough, in my opinion. But what they have done is they've provided them weapons. I really like that. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Corey Davis is a pretty nice top 3 wide receivers. And they've invested some viable options at tight end, and then Breece Hall. You really got to like what they've done. They're giving Zach Wilson no excuses, and I think if he has another stinker of a year, he could be gone. The Jets could be picking low enough again where there's going to be a lot of QBs coming out next year. They could be just re-rolling and try again at the quarterback position. So unless he doesn't show drastic improvements with these weapons, Zach Wilson could very much be gone. And yeah, he's going as, I think, QB 19 with DLF's May ADP. So I'm just not going to get him at that price. But I understand the upside with those weapons. And he has that little bit of rushing upside. Why people would be attracted to him, but just not for me.
Yeah, so he's my QB 18. He's towards the end of tier 4, at the top of tier 5. Still kind of playing around with that. I'll take him over Tannehill, Wentz, Cousins, and Brady, unless I'm dead set on a championship run in 2022. I know 18 doesn't sound high, but the position's kind of stacked. I also think that people tend to overreact to rookie quarterbacks, essentially being rookie quarterbacks. Yeah, it was a pretty tough year, but the Jets still sucked, and they were rebuilding, and everyone knew they were terrible. The line was actually solid. It was PFS like line 11 on the year, which I was like, I was actually surprised by that high of a rating. And then they've added the 2 best offensive weapons in the draft. That's right. I said it. The 2 best. And then, so the things are looking very up for them. And then from the from the tight end standpoint, the depth there is insane, So, like, you got a great line. You had Breece Hall. Michael Carter is your second running back. Then you have, like, Corey Davis as your wide receiver 3. Dave said it perfectly. Like, there's nothing he can't do. And Zach Wilson is talented. Like, he has like a live arm. He can move. He had probably the best run out of a rookie QB last year. So you saw him to be able to show off that athleticism. So there's a little bit of a floor right there in his ability to run. So am I a big Zach Wilson guy? Because it sounds like I am. No, I'm not. But I do recognize I could be wrong here. And I do have to respect the potential ceiling with this one, especially for the weapons that are around him, So I think his play style fits a dynamic stretcher like Garrett Wilson perfectly, too. That is a match made in heaven between those two. And then you got those, I already talked about everything around him. So Zach Wilson's literally got everything around him to be able to maximize what makes him the number 2 pick in the draft last year.
Love that. And Matt, what's your thoughts on Zach Wilson entering year 2? Are you still fairly high on Zach Wilson?
Yeah, I think I'm similar to Todd, really. I wasn't particularly high on him when he came in. I didn't write down as my QB4 in that class, but like Todd just touched upon, I think the amount of weapons that they've now surrounded him with. Last year, you've just got to look at what he had compared to this year. The fact that he has added Garrett Wilson, obviously bringing in a running back in Breece Hall as well. There's no excuse for him now, really, and it's always a risky point at this stage, because it's now, well, this is make or break now for Zach Wilson. I feel we've seen it. Another guy like Tua as well is in that situation where the team has gone all in to give him the ideal opportunity to succeed, and now we've reached that point with Zach Wilson. But he is still only entering his second year. There's still potential that even if it doesn't quite play out the way that we hope this year, can maybe see another chance in the following year. But we do know that this 2023 class looks pretty strong at the top end in terms of quarterbacks. So it just feels risky at the moment with Zach Wilson, but I will say that the weapons that he now has means that I'm hopeful for him. I've got him similar range to where Todd has him in his rankings. I've got him around that QB 18, QB 17 mark. So I am hopeful, but it is a make or break season, I feel, for Zach Wilson.
You are a smart man.
I just will say, yeah, I should have given a pause there. He is very smart.
He was talking to me then. He was talking to me then, Dave, not you.
I know for sure he wasn't talking to me. There was no confusion there.
Nope.
But the upside, what Zach, like, I think too, that upside with Zach Wilson, what he could do for your fantasy team, the value that he could gain being just the consensus QB 18, that could change a dynasty roster. That, like, if he hits, we've been saying a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, and some hope if he hits. But if he actually does hit, what he could do for a fantasy roster and for how easy he is to acquire, I think he's a little bit hard to acquire now that they've invested in Garrett Wilson and how that off and Breece Hall, but still not terribly hard to acquire. If he does hit, that it could be a big win for fantasy managers.
Yeah,
and we're talking about him like for the range as a QB mid QB2. Like we're not like the expectation is not astronomical. Like we're not seeing him crack that top 12. That's not what people are thinking.
Yeah, I'm still fairly high on Zach Wilson. The thing that I struggle with is I can only see them finishing 4th again in the division and getting a high draft pick come next year. I can't see them finishing even 3rd in the division. I think all the teams around them are much better. So he's going to have to show some good chemistry with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore to warrant giving another shot, I think, in 2023.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll move on to the running back position, and certainly someone that's been exciting out of this draft class, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it when I knew that I got the slot of talking about this running back in this Jets offense. Sadly, it's not the guy that I want to talk about. I've got to talk about Breece Hall, obviously selected in the 2nd round by the Jets, and the fact that they move up as well to get their guy. Sadly for me, it looks great for Breece Hall, and I think the hype and everything currently, and if you look on Twitter, it's starting to build up momentum for sure. So I'm just wanting to know what you guys think. What would you class as a successful rookie season for Breece Hall? What do you think the upside is there over with the Jets?
I'm all for the hype here because the hype is real. I think his floor is a mid RB2. I think his ceiling is clear in the RB1 stands. Like, he could crack the top 5. Like, that's how good he is. I don't think Michael Carter breaks that heavily into his opportunity. And though Michael Carter is a good player, okay, but
great player,
great, yeah. But Breece Hall is a superior player to Carter.
Correct.
All right, so I kind of landed in an ideal spot with the solid line, the growing offense, and I kind of like the idea of like Wilson, who he struggles with pressure. So he's like dumping the ball off to Breece and letting Breece Hall be Breece Hall is something that's attractive to me. So that adds a little something there too. So I love Breece Hall. I actually just acquired the 101 in a startup to get my first share of him, and I'd play C2C, and he was impossible to get in C2C.
Yeah.
So thinking about like what a successful rookie season would be for Breece Hall, who I love. He's my RB4 in Dynasty. I think he is a absolute stud. And yeah, but like what a successful season is, I hadn't thought about that yet. I haven't really done my projections yet or anything like that. So I was trying to think what I would consider successful. I think at a minimum, I want to see a 60 to 65% opportunity share. Usually for me, that 70% and above is for those elite type running backs. But as a rookie, I want to see at least 60 to 65 just to be as a success and not a disappointment. And a big number for me is I would want to see a minimum of 4 targets per game for Breece Hall, because that is a big part of his game, his ability to handle a very large workload, but also handle the opportunities in the receiving game. So that 4 targets per game is a threshold where you can enter in the elite part of those RB1s. But 4 targets per game, 60-65% opportunity share, that's, I thought, low end RB1 type numbers. I think you can expect. So I think that would be happy. I don't need him to be the RB3 this year for it to be a successful season. So as a rookie, especially in this offense, considering everything we've already talked about here. But yeah, I think that's kind of covers it up. But I've been really in on Breece. I've had about 4 or 5. I've gone all in some startups, getting him as early as the mid-2nd round in startups before the draft. And now to see Todd in that league that he was talking about, he got him in the 3rd round, which is, I haven't seen that anywhere. So that's great value for Todd here. But yeah, Breece Hall, that I think the only concern you have to have is that Michael Carter cuts into those targets. That's like the biggest, but I don't really think that's going to happen. I think Breece Hall can still get his, and then Carter can still have some receiving work, and they can coalesce or coexist, not coalesce, coexist. Sure.
So my question to you, Matt, is what are you doing? Because I assume that you've got plenty of Michael Carter shares still in Dynasty. Just want to know what you're doing with your Michael Carter shares right now.
I mean, it has been a painful few months for me, to be honest. It's all come crashing down around me, and it's been painful to see. But I will put my bias aside and say that I'm absolutely in love with Breece Hall. The reasons why I love Michael Carter, I liked him as a prospect, but then the situation that he landed in with the Jets, I just love this scheme that they've got over there, that Robert Saleh bringing that 49ers-esque outside zone running. Everything just seems to mesh up perfectly, and that's why it's great for Breece Hall. I know over at Iowa State, I think he ran over, nearly 60% of his runs were zone blocking. So I just feel like this scheme fits perfectly for Breece Hall. The opportunity is there. While I do love Michael Carter, I do think that they will use him in the passing game early. Breece Hall was just as productive in college as a receiver. So, I mean, I'm all in on Breece Hall, and it's a shame because, as you mentioned, I do have quite a few shares of Michael Carter, and currently now he's basically just going to be that, maybe a flex play early on in the season if he does get that receiving work, but then I just think Breece Hall's going to take over this backfield, and sadly Michael Carter's just become a really expensive handcuff for me now, sadly. So yeah, that was a tough one to put on me there, Ali, because you all know my love for Michael Carter, but yeah, I'm all in on Breece Hall for sure.
I will say, because I want to say some positive things about Michael Carter. I think he's a great target right now because I mean, it's not like Breece Hall's going to take every opportunity in that backfield. I would love him to, but I don't think it's going to happen. And he, like James Cook's going his RB27 DLF's ADP for Superflex ADP. And Michael Carter's going his RB43. Like, give me, I'll take that. Give me Michael Carter every time at that cost, because what Michael Carter kind of does what James Cook does, but better. To be, I'll say he can catch the ball better. He can run. He can handle the workload better than James Cook. So yeah, and then if everything happened with that offense of, hey, you've got the 2 young wide receivers, the tight ends, the offensive line is pretty good, like Todd was saying. Give me Michael Carter at cost compared to James Cook every single time.
I will also agree that Michael Carter is better than James Cook at football. I will say that as well.
See, we ended on a positive note.
That's
Matt.
what I just love to end on. Love it.
We need something to take out of this.
Yeah, I'll take that to bed with me tonight. Love it.
So we'll move on to the wide receiver position now and talk about Elijah Moore entering year 2. I'm personally still pretty high on Elijah Moore, especially even with the arrival of Garrett Wilson. He's currently going as wide receiver 22 on Keep Trade Cut. Do you guys think that's about right? Would you think that's a bit high or low? And what are you doing with Elijah Moore this offseason?
I mean, Dave,
never mind. I'll go because he's muted. And all right, way to stumble. I got this.
I felt like I was Zach Wilson fumbling the snap. This is terrible.
Okay, that was more like Mark Sanchez, like butt fumble.
Yeah, but all right, guys, it's nice talking to you. I'm just gonna leave. I really enjoyed my time here.
Right. Anytime Dave and I are on something together, I'm always picking him up. So I'm definitely lower than wide receiver 22, but I'm in like the high 20s, low 30s. As of now, I have him at wide receiver 28, and I'm still tinkering right now. I have him over Claypool, Rondell Moore, Mooney. I have him under Bateman, Deontay Johnson, Ayuk, and Hollywood Brown. So the acquisition of Wilson absolutely like hurt his ceiling. But I think it does open up the field for Moore to be more effective out of the slot, which is, I think, where he was going to make his bread in the NFL. You know what I mean? So he's a guy who needs a high target share, and I think that he's going to get a pretty good one in that. And I think that he could fit as a wide receiver 2 in an offense that's growing. So I think his ceiling is not as high as some people think. But with that said, he's sliding in startups and he's offering outstanding value. So like, I really like Elijah Moore as a high-end wide receiver 3 or as a low end wide receiver 2 if you didn't invest in wide receivers, which I would say, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? But the point is that like, if that's the situation you're going in, because I actually could see that in like IDP weeks too. You know what I mean? Where like, you have the high IDP scores and you want to be able to, focus on those players. And then like Elijah Moore offers outstanding value late.
This is probably the most I'll disagree with Todd on this show. Probably, Elijah Moore is my wide receiver 13 in Dynasty. He is that good. Wow. Todd talked about him playing in the slot. He played 70% of his snaps out wide last year, only 28% slop rate last season.
He won't this year.
He demonstrated his ability to play out wide, and that's what. And I think that's a big time. From week 7 through 13, Elijah Moore averaged 17.8 fantasy points per game. That's less than a full point less than Jamar Chase did. If Elijah Moore did not get injured last year, he was a league winner. He was going in the mid-second round of rookie drafts. And what the pace that he was on with his wide receiver 1 overall weeks, several top 12 weeks, top 5, he was going to win people fantasy championships. That's what his pace was. And I understand that's pace. It's only like, it's only week 7 through 13. But what he was doing with the poor QB play was phenomenal. And what I really like to see was he was being targeted really deep. Zach Wilson was playing hero ball and he was being targeted really deep down the field. People didn't think that was in his range of outcomes. Zach Wilson, when he came back, and when he was with Mike, when it was with Mike White, he was getting in more in time in the offense with Elijah Moore, which I like to see. But then when Zach Wilson came back, you also saw that more as well, more within him playing within the offense. He had a 20% target share and he had 2.3 yards per route run in that stretch. Those are elite numbers for rookies, and that's a top 12 number for all wide receivers over that stretch for what Elijah Moore did. He has the talent. I think from a point of view, or from a statistical point of view, and from an analytical point of view, I think Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore are neck and neck as prospects. I think they are both as good as prospects. They kind of play. I think they kind of play similarly, to be honest. Or like they're going to play in similar parts of the field in the NFL. I really like how they'll be able to use with each other. And the problem is that I'm afraid that Zach Wilson isn't going to be able to carry both of them. And that's really sad to me. But then next year, hopefully they get a real QB. If that doesn't work out, they get a different QB in. But yeah, I am all in on Elijah Moore at wide receiver 13. I think he is that good of a player.
All I can say is I can't wait for the next question.
Well, I was just going to say, you kind of set it up lovely here, because the next question was going to be, and I feel like we could get into a real heated debate here between Todd and Dave, but I want to know, who do you think has the better fantasy season next season, Garrett Wilson or Elijah Moore?
It's easily Wilson. That's right, Dave. It was supposed to be you go first, but I'm going to go first. Easily Wilson. I'm a huge Wilson fan, and I have been since he flashed as a freshman in college. Probably one of the most dynamic wide receiver prospects I've seen in a long time. If you watch his film, like the level of separation he has from coverage is eye-popping. Like, this is a freak, like, elite athlete who is just an absolute natural beast of a wide receiver. And I love Elijah Moore. I actually do. And the point is that
wide receiver 28 talks about how much you love him.
Well, that more speaks to how much I expect Garrett Wilson to demand a high target share, because doesn't targets equal talent, Dave? Well, he's probably one of the most talented rookie wide receivers we've seen in the last 5 years. So, like, we're going to see him being, like, getting open easily. I truly believe his ceiling is being a tier 1 wide receiver. Like, not necessarily by the end of this year, but within like a year or two. And I see him firmly finding himself, in the tier 2, tier 3 group next year. And more ceiling for me is more like tier 3, tier 4 as a PPR monster. And Dave's right. He can play the outside. And I think that he eventually will once Corey Davis is gone, and then they kind of move that in the slot. But with Corey Davis there, Elijah Moore in the slot just makes the most sense to get all your weapons on the field in the best possible way. Go ahead, Davey.
Well, so look, I'm quickly trying to scramble to see Garrett Wilson, something from college. But anyway, I really like Garrett Wilson. I really like Garrett Wilson well. Like I said, I just told you how much I loved Elijah Moore, and I think they're neck and neck as prospects. I think they are both that good. One did it in the SEC, one did it in the Big Ten.
They're not neck and neck. They're
They're
not
neck and neck as prospects. Todd,
They're not neck and
5-star ratings don't mean everything, buddy. From 24/7. I hate to
I'm
tell
not-
you that.
I'm basing off of like watching college football.
I wrote a very
I don't play with
in-depth
spreadsheets
article
all day.
for
I
Garrett
watch
Wilson for DLF. I actually watched 7 of his games snap by snap. So I actually watched some film on Garrett Wilson, not even just highlight film, Todd. So there we go. I really like him, and I've been hanging out with you way too much.
Wait a minute. You watched it snap by snap, 7
snap
games
by
of Garrett
snap.
Wilson.
Yep, it cut it out. Every snap he was on the field, I watched Garrett Wilson.
I call bull. No way that happened.
It happened. I swear. I had to do it for
There's
DLF.
no way that's the truth.
And then,
No.
so I will say Garrett Wilson, I'm very high on him as well. I have him above consensus. He's like my wide receiver 17, I think, overall for fantasy. So I'm all in on the Jets receiving game. And I actually like Corey Davis at price too. So I really need the QB I hate the most, probably in fantasy. I really need him to be good. But no, I think what the first Zach Wilson Elijah Moore has one more year of experience with Zach Wilson. He's got a little bit more rapport. He doesn't have to learn the ins and outs of the NFL game. Just give him a slight edge where I think Elijah Moore finishes just above him as a rookie. But he does have, I think his upside for me as a rookie is a top 24 wide receiver for Garrett Wilson. That's what I think.
Okay.
I mean, did you enjoy that, Ali? That was
I did.
A brilliant 5 or 10 minutes.
I can't wait to watch that one back.
I just dropped the grenade and let Todd and Dave just go.
And
I have a feeling this will be coming back up on our own podcast.
We might want to talk to each other again after this. So
we'll
the fire.
We'll come back down to earth now. We've got to mention the tight end room, and it got packed out pretty quickly this offseason, the tight end room. Just talk us through how you project it, and who do you think is going to emerge as the tight end one, or do you think that they all sort of contribute a little bit and end up eventually cancelling each other out?
I really like CJ Zoma, Tyler Conklin. I liked them as player. I had them everywhere, especially my 2 tight end dynasty leagues. I had them everywhere. They were like waiver wire pickups, even in 2 tight end leagues. And they returned value last year. Now this is them going to land on the Jets to vulture each other is worst case scenario. But then you have to think about it. You've got the 2 rookie wide receivers. You got you got Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Breece Hall, Michael Carter, and then you've got Zach Wilson distributing the ball here. How much room does that leave for the tight ends? I don't think they're just not exciting to me anymore. Outside of 2 tight end leagues, I do not care about them outside of. I think they're fine players, but for fantasy purposes, I think they're roster cloggers outside of 2 tight end leagues.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Dave on this one. I have zero expectations out of that tight end room. Will I avoid it? No, because I think everyone's going to agree with that. So I think Uzuma's the guy I like the most, and I would invest in Conklin. However, I think the guy that I would be most excited to invest in would be Jeremy Ruckett, because I think they gave him some significant capital, even with that situation, and he's free. Ruckett for me though has to be a taxi guy. Yeah. So if you're not in a taxi league, I don't disregard what I just said, but he's a perfect taxi guy. And the thing with Ruckett too is if you go look at his production, like Ohio State didn't utilize him, but he's a phenomenal athlete, and he's a great blocker. So that's the thing too, is that like with Ruckett, he's going to be able to find the field. I don't think it's going to be in his first year while he adjusts to the NFL, but he doesn't have to, because there's 2 good tight ends in front of him. So like I said, I'm a big late right tight end guy. So those Conklin and Uzoma are 2 guys that I like targeting late. And depending on your roster size, and especially from a redraft standpoint, if you have a deeper redraft league, like getting both of them, like in the last couple of rounds, that's not a terrible move, because like you could just play the wire with tight ends anyways, So from a dynasty standpoint, neither of those guys, but Ruckett's my guy for dynasty.
I would just add too, I don't like maybe for Scott Fishbowl where you have like 30 roster spots. I could see that, and it's like extreme tight end premium. But I will say I love what the Jets are doing from a real life standpoint, investing in these tight ends. I like that for the Jets. So I don't want I sound like I was hating a little bit. I think that's great as far as an NFL building perspective.
Yeah,
And
they're
Matt,
definitely going to run a lot of 22 personnel. It definitely seems
yeah.
like that's what they're setting up for.
Yeah. And Matt, is there one of the three that you're keeping an eye on that you might take a shot on late?
I think I'm agreeing with Todd again on this one. I mean, they obviously invested that day 2 draft capital in him. Like Todd mentioned, Ohio State didn't really utilize him, so I feel like there's that untapped potential that we've yet to see from Rookett. And if I'm picking anybody out of these guys, he's a guy that I'm looking to grab. But again, like Todd said, he's one of those taxi squad kind of guys. Somebody you're just going to have to let sit there. We know tight ends, they take time to develop in the NFL, and given the crowded tight end room that the Jets have got over there, I feel like 1-2 years sat behind those guys is going to be great for Rookett, really, getting to learn the game a little bit more, and then obviously step in 2 or 3 years' time. And yeah, I like him as a selection late on. You can get him for basically nothing anyway, and even in tight end premium leagues, I've seen him go undrafted in rookie drafts. So yeah, definitely a guy that I'll be targeting out of the 3.
Love it. And that brings us to the end of the hour. It's absolutely flown by, but at least we all agreed on the final question. There was no fighting from you two. So
Garrett Wilson for life.
So Dave and Todd, thanks so much for coming on, for spending your morning with us. Just tell the audience where they can find you, and is anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at DLF on at F_Spaceman on Twitter. You can find me. I have a Patreon as well. But I actually want to spend the time and just say really thank you guys for having us. Matt, Kev, Ollie, you guys are some of my favorite people in the fantasy community. You guys are incredibly supportive of me. Every time I've come on Fantasy Wildcard, I have had it's like I sweat from laughing. It is an absolute blast. And I hope, because without my mute mistakes and some of the bad things I've said about some personal favorites here, that I can talk to you guys one more time before the season starts, because I really, really enjoy you guys. And what you guys are doing to raise money for the Mind charity means a lot to me personally. I think mental health, what we've seen, the more importance and more awareness has just been through the roof. Great for our country, for humanity. Well, I know this is over in the UK, but in general, for it says a lot. I think that it has been overlooked for far too long. So hats off to what you guys are doing here. This is a fun time. I can't wait. I'm going to be checking in on the stream throughout the day. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Dave, just see your primary care if you're sweating from laughing, please.
We have it. It's that fun of a time.
Crying is normal. Sweating is not. So yeah, you can find me at FF Banterman. I like the banter, as it's very good. I'm not really doing any writing. I like to be a guest and just come on and talk. And Taylor True Rivals is going to kick back up. Like, I finally feel like I got my kid number 2 down, so I can start dedicating some more time to podcasting again. But I just want to echo Dave that I love what you guys are doing for with the Mind charity, and that's amazing. I work with students that are dealing with trauma, anxiety. They've been out of school for 3 weeks to kind of focus on their mental health, and I help them come back to school and transition in, and help them talk with their teachers. So mental health is something that I literally made part of my career as a teacher, and it was a bit of a switch for me because I was more primarily working with kids with autism. So so this is very close to my heart, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and thank you for doing this.
That's absolutely fantastic to hear, and I just appreciate you two coming on. I've really enjoyed this hour, so it's been a fantastic show. So hope to see you guys again soon.
Yep, take care, guys.
Later, gents.
Take care, guys.
Right, and that's it. Then we move on to the next segment. Obviously, that's one half of the AFC East covered. We might as well crack on with the second half, haven't we? It was a shame that Todd couldn't talk about his Patriots, but there you go. We've got 2 fantastic guests coming on to help us here and talk a little bit, as I say, about the Patriots and the Dolphins as well. So without further ado, I might as well introduce both these guys. We've got Mike and we've got Shevin. You can follow over at the Dynasty Rewind over there. Guys, how are you doing?
What's up, gentlemen? How are we today?
Doing really well, thank you. Honoured to have you on. It's going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure. And noticing that the Eagles in the background there, Mike, it's a shame Kev's not on. Obviously, being the huge Eagles fan that he is, he would have absolutely loved that. But all right, it's a pleasure having you on. Shevin, how are you doing?
Boys, I am ready to rock and roll. I got my coffee. It's 7 a.m. here in Arizona, so we're feeling really good about this. Wow. I love what you guys are doing, so I'm happy to be on and happy to be part of this. It's really awesome.
No, like I say, we really appreciate having you on. We respect that. Obviously, it's early, and even early for you, Stefan. I mean, 7 a.m. Well, that's we really do appreciate it. But we might as well kick things straight off and get on with the Dolphins. And Ali, do you want to start with the first question about the quarterback position?
I do, yeah. So we'll might as well talk about Tua. So just want to get your guys' thoughts on how high you are on Tua. Do you think he can be the franchise quarterback of the Dolphins given going forward, given that he really now has got not a lot of excuses going forward with the elite weapons that's been added to the offense. So how high are you two on Tua, and do you think he can be that Dolphins franchise quarterback going forward?
Chev, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I can. I think Tua gets a lot of hate in the Twitter community that I think is not deserved. I mean, the guy has played with an owner that pays the coaches to hopefully lose a lot of games. That's pretty tough to do. Then you got a coach that's trying to, get PED checks on you, allegedly. So, I mean, that's pretty tough too. They don't want you there, it sounds like. But he's got all the weapons around him now, man. I mean, there's really no excuses. He's had a lot of offensive coordinators in his time at Alabama and at Miami. So hopefully he can get a real nice piece with this new coach that's coming in. He's a good offensive mind. Hopefully he can stick around and learn from him a little bit for the next few seasons. I mean, getting Tyreek Hill, having Jalen Waddle, Gaseki. I mean, you got Wilson there now, Chase Edmonds in the backfield. I mean, there's really no excuses, and they upgrade the line a little bit with Armstead as well. So I like Tua. I think he's definitely a quarterback that you're happy to have on your roster. You're probably hoping you have another solid quarterback on your team just in case it doesn't work out, because, I mean, we're all on the fence now. I mean, we're like, hey, is he going to do this or not? It's got to be this year. I mean, there's no excuses no more, like you said. So I like Tua. I think he's in a place now where he has the pieces. He has a short drop down passes they can get to Gaseki or Waddle, or even the screens with Tyreek Hill. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do this season. I think he's somebody that you can probably count on this season to be pretty valuable in Dynasty.
So for myself, I'm not too high, I'm not too low. I'm just kind of middle ground with Tua. I'm just not a big fan of the Alabama style quarterback in the NFL. Everyone talks about the stats that they put up, and there's parallels right now between Tua and Jalen Hurts. It's the no excuses tour for both of these quarterbacks, really. But if you look at them, they're very similar quarterbacks. Get the ball out quick, not the most accurate down the field, so they need the short and intermediate stuff. And that's really where these offenses struggle to produce competent quarterbacks in the NFL. Kyler Murray being the exception. We're taking the Alabama, Oklahoma guys here. There's kind of some parallels there. When you look at these guys, what they had in college was explosive playmakers that were far better away than anything the defense could match up with. So, of course, there's a lot of 80-yard passes out there. It's a 10-yard pass that turns into an 80-yard touchdown, if you guys see what I'm saying. So the disparity is not there in the NFL because defensive backs can't keep up. So if I have Tua, I'm hoping he's not my quarterback 1 in a super flex. If he's my quarterback 2 or 3, I'm happy with that. But I'm probably looking to move on at some point and upgrade if I can.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. A little bit like I just spoke about with Zach Wilson. I feel like he is in that. It's got to be this year. He's got to prove it this year. The Dolphins have surrounded him with those weapons, and this feels like a make or break year for Tua. Obviously, over the previous couple of years, not really had that many weapons in terms of guys that you'd like to see a quarterback surrounded with. Obviously, last year when they brought in Waddle, we saw the effect that Waddle had there, how he was able to produce with Tua. But yeah, this does feel like that make or break year for Tua. Ali, I know. Are you in that same camp? Do you feel like this is the last chance saloon really for Tua?
Yeah, definitely. I certainly hope he can, because I did have him above Joe Burrow coming out as a rookie.
Same.
But I think, Mike, what you said there is spot on. I'd be looking to try and cash in mid-season when he has a big blow-up game, because it's going to happen with these two fantastic wide receivers, Mike Gesicki. It's going to happen. He's going to have a fantastic game. He's going to have a string of probably 2 or 3, and that's when I'd be looking to sell him on at sort of peak value. So it is certainly make or break. Definitely not happy with him as my quarterback 1. He's a fine quarterback 2 right now, but yeah, try and move on mid-season.
Yes, again, it's like what we just spoke about with Dave and Zach Wilson. It's this is like you're getting him at that point. I'm just looking at keep trade currently going QB 19. Is if it hits early and if Tua does perform how we're hoping he does, you're going to see that value increase no end. The ceiling there is potentially high, and then you've got that opportunity to move off to if you're not a fan of him and his longevity in the NFL. So I think there's definitely an opportunity coming up mid-season where you can potentially move off him. So at this moment in time, I feel like Tua is somebody you could probably target at that QB 19 range. But if things do hit early on and you're not too sure about him and his longevity, then yeah, definitely someone you should look to move off of. But well, now we move on to the running back position, and it's a messy one when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. I mean, this offseason it's been addition after addition. Started with Chase Edmonds, then they brought in Raheem Mostert recently, Sony Michel coming in, obviously not to mention guys like Myles Gaskin still there. So yeah, absolutely crowded backfield. But I'm interested to know, is there anybody in this backfield that you do like from a dynasty perspective? If so, who?
Nope.
I mean, Mike, we've got a bit of time to fill in here, so a bit more. Don't
worry, I'll fill it in. It's one of those things. It's like the 49ers, because Mike McDaniels, I think that's his name, right? Mike McDaniels. Yeah. He's coming over. He's going to run a 49ers style offense just on the East Coast this time. So until the season starts and we see the ebb and flow of these guys, we really don't know. So when I'm asked questions like, of these guys, who do you like? If the answer is none of them, then it's okay for it to be none of them. Just look elsewhere. I'd rather, at this point, take a wide receiver or even take a chance on a tight end or trade back if I'm in a startup. But just looking at it here, I mean, Chase Edmonds, to me, if I had to pick one, I think it would be him. Raheem Mostert, super unreliable. Sony Michel, former first-round pick on his third team in 3 years. Big question marks there. Myles Gaskin was great. Should be a backup running back. Did they or did they not sign Philip Lindsay as well? Am I correct about that? No,
he went to Indy.
Okay, good. Well, he's dead. And I think Stefan Ahmed is still there too. Stefan Ahmed was a guy that we liked on the Dynasty Rewind. So there's a lot of big question marks. And unfortunately, this is one of those things where you probably have to let it play out. Again, Chase Edmonds would be my guy. Other than that, these guys are probably just best ball guys for me because one of them is eventually going to pop off. You just don't know who. And you don't know when. And trying to put these guys into a starting lineup on a weekly basis, unless you're scrambling and you're in some sort of panic situation where you need somebody, to me, that's a little bit scary. And I'd rather take a guy with a solid floor that I know can get me something than just roster a whole bunch of question marks in a dynasty league.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think if I had to choose one, I'm going with Chase Edmonds. Just a PPR upside for me is what pushed him above everybody else. And I'm worried for those running backs. There's 2 first-round picks I think the Dolphins have next year, I believe. I think the other ones, I think they own San Francisco's. And I mean, that one could be late. That could be a prime target for one of these top 2023 running backs that are coming out. So if I'm grabbing one of these guys, I am not expecting for more than 1 year at all. And you're just really hoping you can just get that PPR upside at that point. I mean, with what the San Francisco 49ers did last year, they used they always use running backs. There's plenty of them that they always would use. And that's not an offense I'm really looking to be a part of. You just don't know exactly what you're going to get from week to week. And you can't really put them in your lineup and say, all right, this guy is going to do well. He's going to get maybe 6 or 7 catches. He's going to have a couple rushes here, maybe even get a touchdown in the red zone. And I just do not feel confident with any of these running backs this year saying that for just one solo running back in that offense.
Yeah, no, I'm fully in agreement. I think, Mike, you made a great point as well, talking about best ball. I feel like this is one of those backfields in normal dynasty, like you said, you want to avoid it because you just don't know. But I do feel like there's that potential upside there. We know the 49ers backfield, what rewards that can reap. And then if this Miami backfield turns out the same, then great. But like you said, it's just knowing which one. I mean, Raheem Mostert, he probably fits that scheme best out of all these guys. We've seen what he did over at the 49ers when healthy. So yeah, as you say, great to target in maybe if you're in a dynasty best ball league, then great. Somebody that can contribute next year. But on the whole, I feel like it is a mess. And Shevin, you made a great point that if they've got that late first round pick next year, we know how exciting this RB class is for 2023. There's going to be a lot of exciting running backs coming in. So I feel like this could be just that 1 year wonder, and then next year we've got a fresh rookie coming in that we're going to get excited about in this backfield. Ali, you on the same line of thoughts there? Is anybody that stands out to you, or do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with everything. Probably, if you ask me at cost, I'd probably choose Raheem Mostert because he's pretty much free right now. If you're going to get, he's always injury prone, but he knows the offense. If you're going to get 6 to 8 games of pretty decent production out of him, you're going to be happy with what you paid for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with that, we'll move on to your next question, Ali.
Yes, obviously Tyreek Hill moved across from the Chiefs to the Dolphins. I've bumped him down 5 spots in my dynasty wide receiver rankings. So did he fall for you guys, or how far did he fall? And then the big one is, which of these wide receivers would you rather own in dynasty? Would it be Hill or would it be Waddle?
Yeah, I think there's just so much unknown with this offense moving into this season. I mean, it's literally every single offensive position. You just have no clue really what you're going to get. That's pretty scary. But they're all studs, which it's great to hear and have for Tua. But I think I definitely moved Hill down a little bit in my rankings. I'm not sure how much, but you still have to think they're paying this guy so much money. They're going to try to get him the ball as much as possible. I don't think he'll play like a Debo role, playing running back or whatnot a lot, but he's definitely going to have a big key in that offense. If I had to choose one, I'm probably going to go with the one that's cheapest. I'm not sure which one that is now. I haven't done a startup in this year yet. A lot of mocks have been done. Probably Waddle is cheaper, I would imagine. So I'd probably go with him. I'm scared of this offense and not knowing exactly what's going to happen with it, man. It really does throw me for a loop. But I still think Tyreek Hill will be productive. I just don't think you're going to have all of those. Tyreek Hill's down there somewhere chunking up balls. That's going to be happening. I mean, we saw how much hate Twitter gave Tua this last week for throwing an underthrown pass that we have no idea about. I mean, the wind could have been like 20 miles per hour. I mean, who knows, right? So I think Tyreek Hill is going to be in good hands. I still think he's going to get a lot of touches. Just not sure how productive those touches are going to be and what those touches are going to look like just yet.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about how to value Tyreek Hill. Also want to say hi to Kevin, who I see in the comments is saying, who let me on the show? Thanks, buddy. Let's just put it this way. The Kansas City Chiefs offered, there we go. Thanks, Kevin. They offered Tyreek Hill an insane amount of money, and he voluntarily left, or he wanted to leave to go to the Dolphins. So you're bypassing going from one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL and who could go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to play with Tua. So maybe we should think about Tua a little bit differently. If a player like Tyreek Hill wants to voluntarily go play with him, it's just something to think about. So I'm not moving Tyreek Hill down that much. But of these wide receivers, I would want Jalen Waddle because, like Chev said, I haven't done any startup. Actually, I am doing one startup, but it's a co-owner type thing, so I'm not making all the picks. I think Jalen Waddle is probably cheaper right now. I like to go for value. And there's another guy here. I don't know if we're talking about him. I don't see him on the sheet. Eric Zukano, who was a draft pick out of Texas Tech. If you want to take a really, really good dart throw late, he's completely different than whatever else the Miami Dolphins have at wide receiver. Big body guy, outside wide receiver. He's not a speedster, but he's a good physical possession guy. So he's the guy that I would target late. But of Waddle or Tyreek Hill, I'm going to go with Waddle. Tyreek Hill's getting a little bit older. He can still play. He's still fast. But eventually these guys do break down. So just something to think about. Hey, maybe the Dolphins are going to be the real deal. They're going to have to be, man. The AFC East is getting tougher. Finally, it's not just going to be the Patriots running the division. Sorry to all you Patriots fans out there. Actually, I'm not. I really don't care. But the AFC East is going to be fun. The AFC West is going to be fun as well. Maybe the NFC East will be watchable this year. It would be great. But I'm taking Waddle if I have to pick between him or Tyreek Hill.
Is it crazy how this wide receiver landscape has changed over the last few seasons, man? I mean, money talks to these wide receivers, and I'm not convinced that these guys want to play in cold conditions either. I mean, we've seen these guys move to Las Vegas. We've seen them move to Miami. I mean, Kansas City's not a warm place. Green Bay's definitely not a warm place. I don't know if that plays any role in it, but it's got my mind thinking a little bit. I'm not feeling good as a Chicago Bears fan. I'll tell you that. We're not good.
Come on, you guys got Darnell Mooney, and
I love it. Love that. Cole Kmet, I'll take Kmet.
That's right. I know you're a huge Kmet fan.
While you were both talking, I just had a quick look on Keep Trade Cut and where these guys were ranked. We spoke about, we don't really know. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 5, Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 13. So
Really?
how much does that now change your perspective? You obviously said you'd take Waddle, but given that value, are you still happy to pay that? Obviously, you're paying a more of a premium than Tyreek Hill.
All right, then let me ask this. Who do you think it would actually be harder to trade for? Because I understand how, rankings are published and whatnot, but it's all about the person that you're trading with. What is their perceived value of this player? I just feel like Tyreek Hill going there, getting that big money, people are going to be a little more inclined to not trade him so cheaply, whereas Jalen Waddle is the Miami Dolphins' old news. He's last year's guy. Tyreek Hill's the new guy. So I just feel like it would be harder to get him. So things like that, they complicate things. And in that case, again, if you don't know, I just look elsewhere.
Yeah, I'd probably roll with Tyreek Hill then. I mean, wide receiver 13, I think we can guarantee, for me, I think he's gonna finish above that. I mean, I would feel happy with taking him at 13. And I mean, he is older. Waddle's way younger than him. I mean, I can see where there's a little skepticism of Hill going to a different offense where they're not throwing those, Hill's down there somewhere balls. So, I guess that makes more sense after thinking about it a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think Matt made a great point there that if you're looking to trade for one of these guys, I feel like you mentioned, Jalen Waddle was the guy that everybody was after last season, obviously with what he did as a rookie. But now with Tyreek Hill coming in, he's that new news, he's that new exciting player that they've grabbed. And now I do feel like that's pushed Waddle down. Everybody's saying how it affects Tyreek's value, but obviously Jalen Waddle, people are concerned that now he's going to lose that ceiling that he had last year. So yeah, I think Matt, you make a great point there that while looking at things like Keep Trade Cut says that Waddle's so much higher, I think when it comes down to actually putting your money where your mouth is and making those offers, I feel like it could potentially be easier to get Waddle than Tyreek Hill. But with that,
one thing before we move on, Chev made a point about wide receivers not wanting to play in cold. If it was me, I'll play in Green Bay over Miami anytime. If you've never been to Miami in September, it is hell on earth. It is the most humid environment I've ever been to. I mean, I was standing on a street corner right across the street, right? And I was wearing a shirt like this. And I just looked down and I watched myself sweat through my shirt, just standing there waiting across the street. So give me Green Bay in December, anytime you could layer up. But when you're in that much heat and humidity, there's only so much clothing you could take off.
Yeah,
I'll pass.
And I would say that Mike wanted to fight Tyreek Hill 3 years ago when we started this podcast for the Dynasty Rewind. Mike was giving out his address. I mean, he was giving out everything.
Just
Tyreek Hill was too scared to show up at Washington Avenue to fight Mike. So Mike has that as well.
When he was accused of hitting his kid, if you guys remember that. I don't know if you guys remember that at all. So hey, look, it's one of those things. I'm a father, so I don't take things like that lightly. And it's a case of a celebrity athlete, things getting swept under the rug, where if that was any one of us on this live stream or anybody watching, that would not be the case. And I just feel like, things like that, they shouldn't be taken lightly. But of course, being an athlete and a celebrity, he was cleared of any wrongdoing and never missed a game. And those things happening also led to a guy like Mecole Hardman being bumped up in rookie drafts. When I told people pump your brakes, they're like, well, Tyreek's going to get suspended and, blah, blah, blah. And now Mecole Hardman, we don't even know what he's going to be in Kansas City, much like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, you have to really consider things like that. You just had to take everything into consideration. Don't overvalue a player because they were overdrafted. I'm sure a lot of people were overdrafting Tutu Atwell last year. I'm sure, Chev, sorry, people are overdrafting Velus Jones this year. They're overdrafting Tyquan Thornton. So, just do your film study, trust your board, and try not to let the outside noise influence your decisions too much.
No, you make a great point, Mike. And we're going to move on to my next question. But really, we've spoken glowing terms about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Now I'm going to talk about a guy that is probably going to be a short and sweet segment here. But Cedric Wilson, obviously another wide receiver that joined this offseason, signing a 3-year, $22.8 million deal after a few real strong showings, to be honest, over at Dallas with the Cowboys. Just interested to know, is this somebody that you'd maybe look to target in Dynasty, obviously, as a late round dart throw?
Late round, yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been inconsistent, but when he's had to produce, he has.
Yeah.
He does get a slight quarterback downgrade going from Dak to Tua. I will say that, and I think most people would agree with that, except for Dolphins fans that love Tua. But he's also going into another crowded wide receiver room. He had CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup before he got hurt in front of him. Now you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And you're also going to an offense that shows an affinity to run the ball. So I would not overpay for Cedric Wilson if I was in a startup. If I was trading for him, I would not overpay as well. I don't even know what his value would be, like maybe a mid-second round pick in a super flex, maybe late second. He seems to be like a forgotten guy since he signed with the Miami Dolphins. We were kind of hoping he would go to a wide receiver needy team. Goes to the Dolphins, kind of forgotten about. They get Tyreek Hill. But I think he's definitely worth, a late round flyer for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I remember everybody being super jazzed about him going to Miami without Tyreek Hill there. I'll tell you that. I mean, everybody was pumped, like, oh, Cedric Wilson, let's go. Now it's like, oh, man, I don't even know who that guy is. Who's Cedric Wilson these days? So I think he's definitely a good late round target, somebody that is one injury away, honestly, and it could be a good pickup. I think it's a good best ball pick, like Mike was talking about earlier, getting that guy late. Like I said, one injury away, he steps in just like he did in Dallas and could be somebody that's productive in that offense.
Yeah, no, it was funny you mentioned that, Chevin, about the hype. It reminded me a little bit of John O. Smith last year, obviously, when he joined the Patriots. We had a good solid 24 hours of enjoying that before having it come in.
Yep.
Ali, are you in the same? Would you target him late on? But as I say, he's not really an exciting name after going from Waddle and Tyreek Hill to talk about Cedric Wilson.
No, I was one of the guys that was getting hyped about him moving to Miami. So I personally wanted him to stay in Dallas and then Amari Cooper move on to be that wide receiver too. But it never happened. He went to Miami and I was happy about it. He got paid fairly decent for what I thought sort of prospect he is. But then obviously the move of Tyreek just destroyed him. So again, if we're talking late, I'm happy to take him or pay maybe a third rookie pick for him, something like that. But yeah, I wouldn't be putting too much into him right now.
No, absolutely. And now we've covered all the wide receivers, but we'll move on to the tight end position and back to you, Ali.
Yeah, so Mike Gaseki is a guy that I really do have difficulty getting too excited about, but he has produced top 10 finishes throughout his career, just signed the franchise tag to play for another year. Would you rather see him now move on from Miami heading into 2023, or what do you think his ceiling can be in Dynasty?
Yeah, so like everybody else that signed with Miami, we were super happy. I love him going back to Miami. I think that is probably the best spot for him. I was really hoping maybe the Chargers could be a landing spot for him, but that was going to be tough. But back in Miami, you get the relationship with Tua already. And for me last year, I think I had a hot take where, let me know if I'm wrong, Mike, but Gaseki was going to be like a top 4 tight end. And I mean, the first few weeks, it looked great.
Yeah.
And then he had a game with like 0 catches, and I'm like, what the crap, man? Figure it out.
I don't think he even had a target in that game that you're talking about.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was great. But I like Mike Gesicki. I think he's that middle of the field presence for Tua, where if he needs somebody to check down to, he's kind of a good guy to throw the ball to. Big tight end, athletic. I mean, he's a jump ball guy that can make big plays in the end zone. So I really like Gasecki. Definitely drops down a few ticks with Tyreek Hill going there. I think it helps him maybe a little bit in the red zone. I mean, they don't have the biggest wide receivers right now, so that could be a big play for him this upcoming season. I like him as like a best ball guy as well. I can see him going tight end 6 through tight end 12. I'm not sure that he's going to push any higher than that moving forward this season. And, hopefully he lands in a good spot next year where we can get excited for him again, and then some wide receiver is going to come take his lightning again. So we'll see.
Personally, I hope he signs with the Bears next offseason, Chev. They need a tight end out there.
Yo, you got enough tight ends, bro. Chill.
Or something like that. Yeah, so when he signed the franchise tag, I was kind of like, I wasn't excited. I wasn't disappointed, but it kind of made sense for him to just sign the franchise tag and go back. So who knows what's going to happen? Maybe they extend him. Chev, I agree with you 100%. I could see him in the tight end 6 to 12 range. He's just really inconsistent. However, with Mike McDaniels coming in, there's a lot of talk about, he's not the type of tight end that Mike McDaniels. George Kittle is an animal. Mm-hmm. He's on his own plane. You know what I mean? Like, there is only one George Kittle, and he does things so well. He can block. He can run after the catch. He's a fantastic receiver. Mike Gesicki is not as great of a blocker, but even going back to his time at Penn State, Joe, living here in Pennsylvania, I'm a Penn State fan as well. I loved Mike Gaseki. I wanted the Eagles to draft him. They took Dallas Goedert, so still that worked out well for both teams, I feel. But I like Gaseki. I like him going forward. He's a guy that I'd be trying to acquire, and I would use the unknown to try to acquire him cheaply. Like say things, sometimes the unknown can be used to your advantage. I'm also thinking of Frozen right now, Into the Unknown.
I was about to say, there's no way Mike did not bring that up without a Frozen intake there.
The Frozen soundtrack bumps on my way to my in-laws' house every single morning. It's torture. But that being said, use things like that to look, he's on the last year of franchise tag. If he's on a contending team, say, I can make you this offer that might help your team a little bit better. My team's not a contender right now. This makes more sense for me and you, blah, blah, blah. Just try to use things like that. If he moves on, Chev, I think I almost said San Diego. I'm showing my age here. I think the Los Angeles Chargers would have been a good spot. Maybe even a team like the Texans. Who knows? Maybe he'll sign with the Patriots. That seems to be a New England thing. But right now, he could go to the Giants. They still need a tight end, even though I do like Daniel Bellinger as a stash. So who knows? But in the end, I think him staying in Miami probably makes the most sense long term. And if he does, you should be happy about it. Even if they move on from Tua, which there's been talks about, if they upgrade, great. If not, a tight end is always a young quarterback security blanket.
Yeah, no, I seem to remember when he came in as a rookie, everyone was super excited. Obviously, that athleticism, the early draft capital, everyone was super excited about Gaseki. He had that early production. While it's not yet hit the heights that many hoped that he could get to, I definitely think there's some talent there. Like Shevin said, it's a shame that they brought in these wide receivers now, in which he was used in that wide receiver role as well as being an inline tight end. So yeah, there was a lot of excitement. It is a shame that it maybe loses out on that opportunity as being that a wide receiver basically in a tight end role. But yeah, fully agree with what you said, Mike, about somebody that you could look to acquire and bank on that talent more than the situation. We know in Dynasty, that's what we always talk about. You've got to back that talent sometimes and hope that it comes to the forefront. Ali, are you in the same position? I know you quite like Mike Gaseki, so yeah, is he somebody you're looking to acquire?
Yeah, I mean, if I've not got any of the elite guys, I'm happy to trade up from a Cole Kmet, someone like someone that I like as well. But to get to Gaseki, he's got all the traits that you look for in a tight end. But yeah, man, let's get him to the Chargers, and then we'll be really excited about
Herbert. Oh, baby, that would be awesome, man.
I was really hoping for that. That would have been beautiful. I mean, when you're going for these late round tight ends, you're just looking for volume at the most. Like that's for me what I want to look for. Like you said, Cole Kmet, I think he had like 98, 100 targets last year. Not in the best situation where the targets, never in the red zone. But Gaseki had 100 plus targets, and I mean, if you're grabbing somebody late and trying to find that possible tight end that can fly up the boards, that's your guy. You want to find the guy that just get peppered with volume 24/7.
I seem to think we all fell in love with that LA Chargers landing spot for tight ends. I remember watching the Pro Bowl when he was throwing it to Mark Andrews. I was like, why can't we have that all year long in the NFL? Because he's been screaming for a tight end. Gerald Everett obviously going there. Maybe there's some potential there with him, but that waits to be seen. So we're going to move on to the next team now. I've just noticed a comment that came up. Mike, people are wanting you to talk about your Eagles, so I'm sorry that we're not letting you do that. I mean, we needed a longer show. We've got 16 hours here, but we probably need a little bit longer, didn't we, Mike, for you to talk about the Eagles.
I could talk about how much I hate Jalen Hurts for a full
yeah,
that's enough. Come on.
I don't know how much money you're going to raise for your charity. But
yeah, we don't want to risk getting cancelled here, so we're going to talk about the Patriots instead. Sticking with the quarterback position there, when Mac Jones over there had a really impressive rookie season. Actually, many people weren't expecting him to do what he did. Finishes the quarterback 18. Currently sits at the quarterback 18 on keep trade, going around guys like Derek Carr, Tua, we've just spoke about, incoming rookie Kenny Pickett as well, and Kirk Cousins. Is he somebody that you're happy to have as your QB2 in your super flex leagues? Would you be happy to hold him? Would you be looking to move on for him for any of those guys that I just touched upon?
I'm going to hold him. I mean, if you guys know me, I'm a big Kenny Pickett fan, but he's not a lock to start right now. Obviously there's some competition there with Trubisky coming in on that 2-year deal. So it looks like that might be something where they work Pickett in eventually. And look, everyone says that Pickett's going to start sooner rather than later. Trubisky has shown to play well for stretches at a time. Chev can attest that his problem was probably bad coaching and bad play calling for the most part, and being overdrafted as well. just looking at, I would probably take Mac Jones, and we're talking dynasty, we're talking long term. Okay. If he's my quarterback 2, I'd probably take Carr, try to win it all. I'll take Jones over Tua. Right now, as it sits, I would take Mac Jones over Kenny Pickett, and I would also take him over Kirk Cousins, although I do think there's a possibility Kirk Cousins finishes the season higher. But long term, you want the youth. Yeah, I'm super happy to have Mac Jones. I have him in a lot of leagues. He was falling to me in the second round a lot, even in super flexes. So, look, I'm going to take a guy who I think is going to be a starter, and people are like, oh, Cam Newton's still there. I'm like, come on, man. Come on. Cam Newton was a shell of himself at that point. Yeah. So, happy to have him. Looking to acquire him cheaply if I can. I feel like people still hate Mac Jones for whatever reason. Like, we were talking about the Alabama quarterbacks before. Of all of those guys, he was the best pure passer. Like, isn't that what you want from your quarterback? A good pure passer? He's going to an offense that will utilize his skill set. I don't see what the problem is. Right now, I mean, we're going to talk about the wide receivers a little bit. It's still a question mark. But give me all the Mac Jones, man. I'll take him for sure.
Mike, I got to say, I do not see Trubisky on this show sheet, so I'm pretty upset that you would bring that up. And to bring up the that one hit a little deep, Mike, so I'm going to have to find a way to get you back on Tuesday. But let's get back to Mac Jones, I guess. I'm probably taking Carr, Tua, and Cousins ahead of him just because the weapons around them. I mean, Mac Jones is a good player, but I feel like he's one of those guys that Mike talks about where maybe he's better for the NFL than he is fantasy. I just don't see like that huge upside of him throwing the football a lot in that offense with all the running backs that they have. They love to run the football. So I'm not really sold on what his ceiling is yet. I think he's a great quarterback. I just don't know what he brings to fantasy, and that kind of worries me a little bit. But I think he's definitely going to take a step forward. Like Mike said, I think he's one of the QBs from Alabama that was ready to go, ready to be in the NFL, already set up, ready to be successful in that offense. And I mean, sliding him in for Tom Brady in that offense, I feel like he's not Tom Brady. Don't get that in your heads, but he's got kind of that mindset and that kind of smart play where he's not going to lose you the game most of the time. He's going to be somebody that controls the game and gives you an opportunity to win late.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you, Chev. It feels like he just doesn't have that upside. We talk about in terms of actual NFL quarterback. Yeah, I think he's a really solid quarterback. I feel like he's got longevity definitely in the league, but talking from a fantasy standpoint, I feel like he just lacks that upside. And then just going over the names I mentioned, all of those teams have far better weapons surrounding the quarterbacks, and obviously we're going to get onto that a little bit later, what the Patriots have there. But Derek Carr obviously bringing in one of the best wide receivers in the league. We've spoke about Tua and the weapons he has. Pickett falling into an ideal situation. Not often you get a rookie quarterback coming into the league where he's got an elite wide receiver like Deontay Johnson, and obviously Kirk Cousins with Justin Jefferson. But Ali, I'll pass it on to you because I know you put out a tweet recently about Mac Jones. Maybe I can stir the pot a little bit here, get you fighting with Mike. Obviously, Mike clearly likes Mac Jones, but Ali, what's your feelings on Mac Jones?
So I put out a tweet because when I was on Keep Trade Cut yesterday morning, he's actually 2 spots higher than Aaron Rodgers. Now, for the life of me, I can't see why he's above Aaron Rodgers.
MVP Aaron Rodgers, right? Is that who?
Yeah.
Okay.
The MVP.
Just make sure it wasn't Amari Rodgers.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think I've ever seen a trade where you can get Aaron Rodgers straight up for Mac Jones. I don't think you ever see that happen. But just the fact that Rodgers is now 2 spots lower than Mac Jones, I think is absolutely crazy. Give me the 2 guaranteed years of Aaron Rodgers with whoever is his wide receivers over 10, 15 years of Mac Jones and his safe quarterback play.
The only thing I will say is, again, we're talking about a quarterback 2 here. It's nice to have that steady Eddie at your quarterback 2 sometimes. And if it's a 1 quarterback league, and he's my backup, where if I have an injury to my star one, my starting quarterback, or there's a bye week or something, I'm fine with putting Mac Jones in. But we need those solid floor guys too. I understand that everybody always wants to go for the ceiling for every single player. Sometimes, and especially with guys in a backup role, quarterback 2, quarterback 3 role, you just need the guy that you can rely on. And I think Mac Jones is the reliable guy. Like, look, remember for years, Derek Carr was the reliable guy. Now we're talking about him in certain cases about being a top flight quarterback prospect with adding Devontae Adams. Josh McDaniels coming in should open the offense up a little bit. Or will he? Or is it going to be like a Patriot-style offense where we really don't know what to expect? So there's a lot of question marks there. But when I say I like Mac Jones, I'm not like over the moon about him. It's just maybe I'm a little higher on him than other people are. That's okay, because then if I am, I can get him on my rosters cheaper. And I'm okay with that. Yeah, because Chev knows how cheap I am.
Yeah, he's a cheap bastard, boys. I would say that.
I really am.
He's gonna make you throw in Fab to every single trade too. So you gotta watch out for that.
At least $3. Like, come on,
at least.
I'm hoping that Fab is like the new cryptocurrency, and I can just cash it in. And have enough Fab that I could pay my mortgage 1 month would be fantastic. Because I'll be doing good if that's the case.
No, I think you nailed it, Mike. We spoke about it a little bit earlier when we had Luke on talking about Cousins, and I said I feel like a lot of people underestimate just how valuable just a steady quarterback can be in Superflex leagues. While you're not going to get that elite ceiling, these guys offer that really safe floor, and sometimes you kind of need that. Lets you address other needs on your roster in startups, especially. So I fully agree that steady quarterback too is probably more valuable than we actually give it credit for. But Mac Jones, he definitely fits that bill as a really steady QB too. Sure. So Ali, we'll move on to the running back position and your question for the guys.
Yeah, it's just mainly going to be about Damian Harris. And I live by a couple of things in Dynasty, although it might change a little bit now, is I tend to avoid the Patriots backfield and avoid the Ravens wide receiver room. But so the Patriots backfield is something that I just can't seem to work out. And do you guys still seeing him being the lead back for the Patriots this coming season? Obviously on the last year of his contract, would you guys be trying to move off him in Dynasty right now?
I'm definitely trying to move him. I mean, the guy had, I want to say 15 rushing touchdowns this last year. I don't see that happening again. It's just that stat alone is just so hard to do season in and out. Like, you cannot do that every single year. It's almost impossible, and especially in that offense where they like to use a good amount of running backs. I mean, they just got 2 running backs in the draft. That could be the sign like, hey, man, we're moving on after the season. And they could run him into the ground. I mean, that 15 touchdowns, maybe it is a thing, but I just don't see that being the case. I'm trying to get rid of him right now. Get away from it, be done with it, sell it at its highest value, I would imagine right now. Like you said, I don't trust any running back ever in this offense. I mean, James White was a guy that he's still going to have relevance, apparently. Everybody's talking about James White, so I just don't want any piece of it. It just doesn't make sense for me to have that unknown, like Mike would say. So I'm definitely moving on from Damian Harris, getting what you can, and it should benefit your dynasty team moving forward. It's just so hard to tell what he's going to be next season.
Yeah, I agree. And Chev's right. 15 touchdowns, didn't hit 1,000 yards, 929 yards. But if you look at it through his career, he's averaging 4.8 yards per carry. But I do agree. It feels to me like they're going to use him and just let him walk. Now, there's another possibility too, that he gets traded. There's always there's always camp injuries. And to me, this is a guy on the last year of his contract that just screams for trade. If a starting running back somewhere goes down and they don't feel confident in their backup guy, the New England Patriots just keep doing their thing, just stockpiling players at positions, and we don't know. And it's a great piece of advice. Stay away from Patriots running backs. Stay away from Ravens wide receivers. It's one of those things. If you don't know and you have to pick somebody, just go somewhere else. So if you want to take a shot on Damian Harris, I feel like he's still too expensive to acquire cheaply because he just came off that 15 touchdown season. But, maybe in the middle of the season, if your team's not doing so good and you want to take a risk thinking that he's going to be a starter somewhere next year, that's when I would try to acquire him. If not, if you're a contender and he's on your team, just ship him out right now. Try to get a nice piece back that could help you win ASAP.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I know we always talk about this Patriots backfield as being a landmine. Even last year when it went down to two guys, I still didn't know which one to pick out of Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. It's always been a headache in fantasy from as far back as I can remember. So yeah, I fully agree. This feels like a key time to maybe cash out on Damian Harris, and Matty make a great point that he could be a potential trade candidate if anything were to happen to starters in anywhere else across the NFL. Is there any particular landing spot that you could see maybe him keeping that value? Is there a certain team that stands out in your mind that you wouldn't mind him moving over to?
I'll tell you what I would love. I would love him to go to the Texans and just frustrate everyone that drafted Damian Pierce at like the 110, 112.
Gator's about to be so pissed, man.
I'll get ready to throw his comment up on the screen when it happens.
You know, a team like that, I could definitely see being a possibility. I don't know. It's hard to say right now because we don't know. Guys get hurt. There's always career-ending injuries. Two guys retire, so we don't know. I mean, for all we know, Austin Eckler just decides to hang it up, and now he's with the Chargers. You know, and then Isaiah Spiller is no longer a thing, or he ends up in Seattle and screws up Kenneth Walker's would-be ascendance, or Minnesota signs him for whatever reason. We don't know. So it's really hard to say, and it's super unpredictable, and that's why it's a really big risk to trade for a guy like Damian Harris, and why it might be hard to trade him away. To be honest with you, he might be a guy that ends up just sitting on your bench, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. I could definitely see him fitting into that role. Ali, do you feel the same way? I've just seen that Gator has put "stop the hate" as his comment.
It's no hate. It's no hate. I'm just saying I could see that being a thing that happens. That's all.
No, absolutely. Ali, do you feel the same? I'm assuming you are in that same camp of looking to move off him if possible.
Yeah, massively. Again, I try and avoid the situation. I've got one share of Damian Harris and I've got one share of Ramondre Stevenson, and they're both on the same team, and I just can never know when to start them. They're fine for best ball, I find, but again, if you're trying to pick one or two for your flex spots or whatever, it's just impossible. So I'm trying to package them up and just get rid of them this off season.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just move on to my next question, which is going to be, I know we've kind of hammered the running backs quite a lot here, but they've obviously selected Pierre Strong in the 4th round and Kevin Harris in the 6th round. And while we know it is a crowded backfield, is there any interest in either of these guys? Like Alice touched upon, obviously Damian Harris, potentially a free agent next year. Are they somebody looking to target maybe that upside if a starter was to go down?
I will say this: if you are not sending glowing reviews of Pierre Strong on your YouTube channel, Pierre Strong's dad will chime in and ask what you know about football. And if you've ever played, check out our YouTube channel and look at our Pierre Strong video. That is Pierre Strong's father. And I did. Here's how I verified. I said, "Hey, Mr. Strong, now that your son was drafted by the Patriots, how do you feel?" I just kind of floated out because that's a feeler question, right? And he answered and said, "Oh, he's going to do great. I'm so proud of him." You know, if you're asked that question, he's not your son, you would say he's not my son, right? There you go. I should have been a detective. Honestly, I'm staying away from these guys, to be honest with you, because where they're getting drafted, I'd rather take a chance on a wide receiver in this class. And I like Pierre Strong. I was really hoping he would go to a place where he could showcase his opportunity. I think he's a pretty good between tackles. I think he can catch. They just didn't ask him to do it at South Dakota State. It's not the offense that they run. And I'm staying away from Kevin Harris completely because I thought he was one of the most boring running backs that I scouted out of this entire class. But the 6th round was fitting for him, to be honest with you. Like him, Kennedy Brooks, Tyron Davis-Price, these were guys that I was completely out on before the draft. I'm still kind of out on. Maybe Kennedy Brooks just a little bit because we don't know about Philadelphia's running back situation, so there might be more opportunity there. But yeah, I'm just out on these guys unless I could get them as a UDFA and I have a huge bench and a big taxi squash. I can't say taxi squad to save my life. I always try to combine taxi, stash, and I can't. I don't know.
The whole thing at the Dynasty Rewind, man. I tell you, there's going to be a pandemic over there.
If I got a big taxi squad or a big bench, I'm okay with throwing these guys on there. If not, give me a wide receiver late with some upside, or even a tight end in this class. Talked about Bellinger, Kate Otten's going late, guys like that. Maybe even a Charlie Kohler or an Isaiah Likely. Not Jalen Weidemeyer though. Yeah, I'd rather take a chance on guys like that.
Yeah. I remember a time when Jalen Weidemeyer was our tight end 1 of this class. That was a fun time. That was a
long
good
time ago.
Yeah.
Just in case Pierre Strong's dad's watching, we'll give him a stash just for him. So if you're watching, Mr. Strong, please let us know. We'd love
How you
you
doing,
to
Mr.
donate to this great cause. But we're gonna stash your son. We think there's some upside there, and we think there's a possibility. So we're gonna go grab your son and put him on the squash, as Mike would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully agree. Get him on that squash and let's see what happens in a couple of years' time. But yeah, with that, Ali, we'll move on to finally talk about these wide receivers over at the Patriots and your question for the guys.
Yeah, so I just want to put you under a bit of pressure here. I know we're talking dynasty, but just want to ask you, who do you think, or you've got to make your pick for who's going to be the wide receiver one of the Patriots this coming season? Will it be the free agent pickup, Devontae Parker? Will it be Jacoby Myers? Kendrick Bourne is someone I've always quite liked. Nelson Aguilar still there, or has got the rookie coming in, Tyquan Thornton? So who do you guys think is going to be their wide receiver one?
Man, what a wide receiver room that is. It's still better than the Bears, maybe, but man, good Lord. I'm going to go with, I don't know. Jacoby Myers is a guy that seems to get target a good amount. He's just missing the touchdown upside. I will say Jacoby Myers. I mean, Devontae Parker could have that 9th year breakout we've all been waiting for him to have. But yeah, I'll stick with Jacoby Myers. It's a fun name to say. I know Kendrick Bourne's pretty fun to say too, but I'll say Jacoby Myers for this upcoming year.
Okay.
How do you really want me to answer this question? I'll turn it down a little bit, but like my dad used to say, if you throw enough crap at a wall, something's going to stick eventually.
Well, true.
I mean, I don't think it's Devontae Parker. Honestly, out of all these guys, I think it's Jacoby Myers. Just the way he plays, likes to get underneath, and the way that the Patriots' offensive scheme is, I would say he's probably the best bet. Now, keep in mind, the wide receiver one on the New England Patriots might not excite like anybody at all. There's a possibility that tight ends are more relevant, backs are more relevant. We've seen that happen in the NFL before. We've seen it happen with the Patriots before. I mean, Kendrick Bourne, okay. Nelson Aguilar has been banged up and he still has stone hands. And Tyquan Thornton ran, I think, one of the fastest 40s at the combine, right? But yeah, watching his films, he's that fast and he can't separate, which I don't understand it. So to me, he's more like a special teams return man. I would also like to take a chance and say I think the New England Patriots had like one of the worst drafts this year. I mean, they're drafting guys like first round pick. Yeah, we're going to outsmart the whole NFL. No one's ever heard of this guy, and no one's getting him. And everyone's sitting there like, dude, we had a UDFA grade on that guy. Like, what are you doing? And then they take Tyquan in the second round. It's like, what are you guys doing up there in New England? But listen, I guess Bill Belichick has his process. He's been really successful. So I guess we just have to trust it. But just yuck. Why did you even have to put this question on me? I'm trying to ruin my Saturday, guys.
I will say this, though. I will say Cedric Bourne had 12 rushes for 125 yards. So maybe we're undervaluing him as the running back one in that offense. I mean, I think he was second for wide receiver in rushing yards. I think I saw that on Front Yard Fantasy this week during their game show. So I don't know. It's just disgusting there. I mean, their first round pick even said, I got a couple crazy friends. Are you sure this is the Patriots? Is this you? And then they put Belichick on the phone. So who knows? Maybe Belichick's dog picked him and he just had to go with it at that point. So it's going to be a fun year to be a Patriots fan and see what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I'm glad Bill Belichick's not on Twitter because he would be one of these engagement farmer, clickbait kind of guys, obviously going for that completely outlandish selections that they made over there in New England. Yeah, it was a real head scratcher what they was even trying to do in the NFL draft. And yeah, I think I fully agree. If I was picking any of these guys personally, it's Jacoby Myers. And a bit like Gate has just mentioned, it is kind of pin the tail on the donkey, really. It's just pick your poison and you're probably going to get killed with it because it's not going to be great. Yeah, it's just funny that we're talking about all these other quarterbacks and the glutton of exciting weapons that they've got, and then we've got to talk about Mac Jones, and yeah, none of these guys really stand out. But maybe in the future, maybe New England start looking at getting some weapons for Mac Jones, and hopefully we can see some more from him. But with that, we've managed to somehow get through the wide receivers, so we'll move on to the tight ends, another position that's filled with guys. Obviously, Hunter Henry, he won that battle between the newly signed tight ends last year, and going up against obviously Jonnu Smith when he come in. Hunter Henry finished the tight end 10, Jonnu Smith tight end 36. So clearly Hunter Henry was that league guy. Do you see it being any closer moving into 2022? Do you think Jonnu Smith can take that step forward? I know he's a guy that in fantasy circles we really liked and what he did over at Tennessee. Do you see this gap getting any closer?
I think it could. I did see something the other day that he's approaching his offseason a lot differently. Like he actually attended minicamp this year, but I think he was also expecting his wife was having a baby last year and there was still some COVID concerns. So I get it. The Patriots scheme, from what I'm told, I do not play football anymore, is very complex. It's hard to learn. So yeah, I could see there being, an issue with him fitting in right away. You remember when he signed and we were all excited, then Hunter Henry signed and then it's like the year before they drafted Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi and everyone that overdrafted them was like, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Devin Asiasi in one of my leagues was drafted at the 105.
Wow.
Wow.
So I said to the guy, are you on drugs? And he said, yes. So I was like, okay.
Even still, it doesn't explain.
I was like, well, that must be some good stuff. I could definitely see it being closer. And that being said, I'm completely out on both of them because this is an offense that's so unpredictable. The backfield, the wide receivers, the tight ends. Really, honestly, the only thing that you can count on is the steady Eddie quarterback. He's going to get the quarterback points. That's it. Everything else is just a huge question mark. So maybe the correct advice should be no Patriots skill positions at all because we just don't know. For best ball, great. Draft them, line them up. But for putting in your lineups every week, it's going to be so gross. You're not going to know what to do. These guys are going to get way overdrafted, and you can definitely scoop up some value around them in drafts. So I think it'll be closer. They're probably going to both be like, I think Hunter Henry is going to be a high-end tight end too, and Jonnu will be like a low-end tight end too. It feels like, they kind of start to meet in the middle a little bit there.
Yeah, I think it's hard in that offense too. Like the volume is really just not there. I think Hunter Henry had 75 targets last season. And then say Jonnu Smith does become relevant a little bit. I mean, there's just not enough volume, I don't think, in that offense for tight ends to just be successful. If I had to go with one, I'm drafting Hunter Henry late, hoping I picked up one of the studs early on just so Hunter Henry could be that bye week guy. I mean, there is possibility that Hunter Henry could be something a little bit better. But 9 touchdowns last season, I just don't know if that's going to be replicated. It could. But there's not enough volume. Like I said, I'm a big volume guy if I'm picking tight ends, and 75 targets in that offense where they're going to run the ball a lot. I'm just not super thrilled about that. So he's definitely a guy I would grab late, but I'm not really expecting him to do too much. I'm not relying on him to be my tight end one at all, even though he did. I think he was, he was tight end 10 last year. I mean, you could be a tight end 10 and have 50 catches. Like, it's insane these days. Like, you just have to do minimal work. It's like when you're working on a project and you do 5% of the work, but your class gets an A. Like, it's perfect for that, but I just don't trust him enough to grab him high. I'm grabbing him late all day. But yeah, this offense, it's kind of nasty. Ugh.
Yeah. I think it's just funny as well how we were just speaking about the Buffalo Bills. It kind of fits like what Dawson Knox is like. It's those touchdowns were brilliant, but it's like they don't really have that consistency in terms of volume. And I'm like you, Chev, where I want those guys that are in that ideal situation where they're going to be getting targets. And even though this wide receiver room is pretty poor, we've gone over it. But even still, I feel like Hunter Henry not really able to show a lot of usage in terms of volume. And personally, Jonnu Smith is somebody that, in terms of fantasy, he feels like that fit more that I'd be more excited about. We saw over at Tennessee when he was used a bit in the running game and how explosive he can be as an athlete. He's the guy that, and probably why we were all excited when he landed with the Patriots, that we were hoping he could be used in that way. Sadly, it didn't turn out that way. But given the current value of these two guys, I know I'm in a startup tight end premium league, and I took Jonnu Smith right at the end because nobody seemed to want him, and I just feel like there's that potential upside there in Jonnu with that athleticism. So yeah, fully agree. Well, it's the entire offense really. It's stinky. I think we've put you under. We've not been great to you there, have we, guys? We've brought you on to be fantastic guests, and we've attended on the Patriots. We had a bit of fun with the Dolphins to start with, but New England, it's not looking great in terms of fantasy. But Matt, you made a great point as well. Best ball, maybe this could be a team to target because of how late all these guys go. But yeah, on the whole, sorry that we had to put you through that. And Ali, have you got any closing thoughts on these tight ends before we let the guys go?
Not a lot. Only that I did have loads of Jonnu Smith in Dynasty before he went to the Patriots, and I was quite excited and for 24 hours until Hunter Henry signed, and then it crushed me. And yeah, I just want to avoid the situation altogether. Hunter Henry's going to regress a little bit. Jonnu Smith's going to come on a little bit, and again, just both cancel each other out, I think.
It was like they were going for the dollar store Gronk and Aaron Hernandez combo there. And it just hasn't panned out. It really was the dollar store that they came up with all this stuff. And then they drafted 2 guys, and then it's just been a mess there draft-wise, I feel like. I don't know if Sean's listening, but Sean, close your ears, man. It's been rough to watch them draft this last few seasons. I mean, as a Bears fan, it's been fun to watch the Packers draft, though. I'll tell you that. It's been interesting.
Listen, the Patriots just have a way of ruining everything. Like when the Eagles went to the last Super Bowl, everyone's like, oh, we want them to play the Patriots. We want to beat the best. I was like, no, I want them to play the Jaguars, man. I want them to win 56-0. I don't want it to even be a contest. I want them to walk away with it. The Patriots just have a way to ruin everything. And it's just one of those things where, again, in the game, you score 41 points and you're still nervous to the last second because the Patriots just ruin everything. Sorry, Sean. They just do. They're no fun. If you've ever met a Patriots fan in real life, one person excluded, you know who you are. They're insufferable. Sorry, I had to say that. Just like Steelers fans, too. And Cowboys fans. How many rings do you have? 0. I don't play in the NFL just like you. Okay? That's my answer.
There you go.
What a brilliant way to end your segment. Just letting Mike go off on every fan base possible. Absolutely. No, and as I say, thank you guys for coming on. Chev, Mike, do you want to just shout out where people can find you, anything that you're currently working on?
Start off, Chev.
Yeah, you can find me at Chev Boyardee, the boys with an I, on Twitter. We're doing a lot of stuff at the Dynasty Rewind, a lot of YouTube content. I think there's a video every day, it seems like. So fun to get those videos out. I mean, we're trying to grow as fast as we can and help as many people win championships. So hopefully we're helping you do that. We got that squash loaded up. Mike, what do you got for us, man?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Rewind CEO. Follow the show at Dynasty Rewind. We have a Facebook group. We have an Instagram account. Our YouTube channel, we are approaching 2.5 thousand. So once we get there, there will be a live stream. We're 140 subscribers away. So hit the subscribe button. Chev, you're right. We got a video pretty much every day for the most part. We got Bob, our director of operations, is quite the planner. Whether you want it or not, there will be a new Google document delivered to your mailbox every day for you to fill out some sort of sheet, because I have time for that. But yeah, we have definitely a lot of great stuff coming. We're not going to slow down over the summer. We're just going to keep rolling. We're going to make sure that everybody has all the information that they need. So by all means, please come check us out. We would love to see you in the comments. We don't live stream the show anymore. You know, once Twitter stopped working with StreamYard, which they're working on for the last 6 months, by the way, we decided we just kept it old school. We do the audio pod, we release it, and then we cut the stuff up, the video up for the YouTube. So come check us out. Our audio pod is available everywhere that audio pods are available. And if you want to hear us, we're not on your preferred platform, DM me at Rewind CEO, and I will make sure that I get it there as soon as I can. Pods drop Wednesday morning.
2,500 subscribers. Mike will take his shirt off on the next pod. I heard that.
Wow.
I will not do that because if you look, I am very, very pasty. Okay, so look,
you got the white wall covered up there, man. Good job. Be smart.
Look, I'm washing out the camera right now with how Caucasian I am. So I'm not. My shirt's staying on. It's just not happening. Sorry, guys.
No, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Check the guys out if you haven't already. And once again, thanks for coming on and joining us. It's been a lot of fun. And again, sorry to put you through the Patriots, but yeah, a lot of fun having you on. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for all you guys are doing too, man. This is awesome. We're definitely happy to be a part of this. I think Mike's wife works in a field like this, so super glad to be part of it. Definitely donating soon once that paycheck hits. I gotta save a little buddy real quick, but I'll definitely be sliding in with that. So thank you guys so much for this. It's been awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Cheers for coming on.
Appreciate that.
All right, guys, appreciate
Enjoyed it, guys. Take care.
Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Drink a lot of water, boys.
Will do.
Yeah, try it.
Right, and that's it. That's another segment over and done with. We'll bring Kev on in. On mute. So trying to talk to us, but can't talk to us. But
technology.
There you go.
But, got plenty of water in me. I'm ready to rock and roll now. Well,
Love it.
midway
It's
through
refreshed.
the second.
Yeah, midway through, I'm gonna have a little break. It's been good though, boys. I've enjoyed it so far. You've got a couple of great guests coming up as well, talking about some of the worst teams over in the NFC East, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
I'll leave you guys to it and enjoy the next hour.
See you in a bit,
Cheers,
Matt.
Hello,
So-
Ali.
So here we are. What are we? Hour number 7, I think this is.
Going into hour number 7, yeah.
We're heading to halfway stage of this streamathon. Good to have you back, Kev.
Appreciate it.
We are moving into the NFC East. We are going to be talking Cowboys and Commanders. So we've got a couple of fantastic guests coming on from the Undroppables. We've got Justin and we've got Josh. How you doing, guys?
Doing well today. Excited to be on the show. Thanks for
What's
having
going
us.
on, fellas? How are you? Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Going good, lads. Yeah, it's great to have you on, and we're almost halfway, but plenty of time to go just yet. We're in the best division, the NFC East. I don't know if you boys agree, but it's where my Eagles sit. So we'll see how it goes. But I'll let you take it away. I'll let you introducing it.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Cowboys, America's team, as they're called. Kev's favorite team in the NFL, not. But yeah, we'll move on to your question, Kev. We'll start at the quarterback position. So what's your question?
Yeah, so first off, cheers for coming on, Justin, Josh. It's a pleasure to have you on, representing the Undroppables. The Cowboys QB position we'll start off with. Dak Prescott. He's had an interesting offseason. Lost his alpha wide receiver in Amari Cooper. Last season he finished QB8. They've added players like Jalen Tolbert. They've kept Michael Gallup around as well. So I just want to know, he finished QB8. What do you think the chances are that he finishes as a top 6 QB in 2022?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I think if we're looking at the sheer numbers of it all, Dak Prescott had arguably the most volume of any point in his career. He had 596 attempts last year, which was tied for 2019. But he did have nearly 22 additional completions. Unfortunately, though, his yards per attempt went down, his yards per game went down, his QBR went down, his sacks went up. And so there's, obviously a concern there. The one good thing that did happen out of all of that was that his touchdown percentage did go up as well. So I think you're in a 6 point per touchdown passing touchdown league. I think you've got a good shot at getting him up there, 6, 7, 8. Though I'm a little bit concerned. Yes, he did lose Amari Cooper. He is likely going to have Michael Gallup out for a little bit, right? They do believe to have him back in August, but he'll obviously miss OTAs and mini camps and a portion of the preseason. So how long is it going to really take for Michael Gallup to really kind of get back into the swing of things? Obviously, the addition of Jalen Tolbert is going to be pretty nice. He's, obviously, if you've been paying attention, he's been rising up draft boards and dynasty leagues as of late. But the loss of Amari Cooper, having to kind of put everything on CeeDee Lamb to be the alpha wide receiver one, is going to have a lot of question marks, at least for me, in making sure that he can kind of get back up there. This offense seems to have changed pretty drastically. Again, despite the fact that he had 22 more completions than any other previous season he's had in his career, he was short by about 450 yards on 2019 from his career high. So that average yards per attempt tends to show me that there's a lot of dink and dunks, a lot of security blankets. We'll talk about Dalton Schultz a little bit later, I believe, but there is going to be a lot of different things that are happening in this offense that has me concerned that Dak Prescott can be really thought of as that top 6 quarterback. It'll be close. I'm not saying that it won't, all of a sudden he won't be top 10. He'll obviously be a top 10 quarterback just based on volume alone. But top 6 is kind of pushing it, I think.
And Josh, what are your thoughts on Dak Prescott? Do you think he's got a great shot of being a top 6, 7 quarterback in 2022?
I think he does. Dak Prescott struggled a little bit last season, but as we know, like he was coming off of that ankle surgery. So maybe it's a little bit of an acclimation period. I had him on one of my dynasty teams, so I was watching him all year. And he didn't seem to completely get comfortable. So maybe it's just a mental thing with coming back from that injury. And maybe he takes a step forward this season because he's now a year removed from that surgery. So he definitely has a shot of being in that top 6 just because he has that upside of being in a high-powered offense. McCarthy will call the pass plays for him. So I think he has an outside shot looking in, but I think he definitely does have a shot to get there.
And Kev, I know you're not Dak's biggest fan in Dynasty. What are your thoughts on Dak? Would you still be happy with him as your quarterback one on a Dynasty team?
I think I think he's a similar sort of guy to like a Joe Burrow. He's not going to be a sort of a Konami QB giving you the rush upside. Like Burrow, he's coming off an injury as well last season. So I view them very similar guys. Dak's winning with his arm in the main now. But I do think early on in the season, you need to be tempering your expectations as to what you think he can be. If you're thinking he's going to be top 5 early on, I think that's not ideal. I think if you are a contending team, maybe Dak's someone you look to pivot off. If you're in a win now situation, maybe pivot into a guy that's going to really light up early on, maybe to like a Matt Stafford level type guy, someone that's set to smash it early on in the season and really push you for a ship this season.
Yeah, I think I'm about the same, really. I've moved him down a couple of spots in my rankings. Deshaun Watson's overtaking him now. I'm still fine with him as my quarterback one, but I still liked it if I could to try and move up slightly or move down and pick up some value. So that's about where I am with Dak Prescott. We'll move on to his longtime running back, Ezekiel Elliott. How are you guys approaching Ezekiel Elliott in Dynasty? Is he a decent buy for you if you were a contending team with his value and how far that he's dropped? Or really, are you trying to get anything for him right now if you do own him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of both. It's going to be a kind of a cop-out answer. Like I said, I'm a Cowboys fan, so it's hard for me to put on the rose-colored glasses like some Cowboys fans would do. America's team. Unfortunately, I don't depict them as America's team anymore. But Ezekiel Elliott has gone down in every single season in his career in yards per game. His yards per attempt has really kind of roughly floated around that 4.2, 4.5, 4.6 area. So that's still good. But his touchdown numbers aren't what they were in the very beginning. And of course, his attempts are not where they were. He had his career low at 237 rushing attempts last year at only 4.2 yards per attempt. That was less than 60 yards per game, right? If we're looking at that over the course of a 17-game season, he still hit 1,000 yards, still had 10 touchdowns. But this is fantasy football. This is not a full-length thing. So it's a week-to-week type of situation. And if I'm using him as my 6th running back taken, or whatever you kind of put him at, I'm gonna expect more production out of Ezekiel Elliott. The offensive line was not nearly as great last year as it had been in previous years. We don't know what Tyler Smith is going to be at the guard position. We do not know what Tony Pollard's role is really going to continue to be. We don't know if Dak Prescott is going to be expected to run more now that his ankle's got a year additionally behind him. I'm definitely concerned about it. However, he did finish 6th in the NFL last year as a fantasy running back. Now, granted, Dalvin Cook was hurt, Christian McCaffrey was hurt. We don't know what's going to happen with Cam Akers and Dobbins and Travis Etienne. We don't know what's going to happen with the rookies. So there's a lot of different question marks. I still think he's kind of your mid-3rd round, early 4th round type of running back that you take, and you look for the upside to potentially get you that 2nd round, 1st round production. But there's definitely some concern with the way that this offense is being run, focusing more on the pass than on the run. And those numbers certainly do not look good. Tony Pollard is nipping at his heels. Tony Pollard has another really good year. Zeke is gone in Dallas. He's cut next year. And so that is something that he's got to worry about as well.
And Josh, are you looking to move on Ezekiel Elliott this off season, or are you still happy to own him if you're a contending team?
Yeah. So I actually. Okay. So I actually just made a trade for Ezekiel Elliott for one of my contending dynasty teams. I have my 2 quarterbacks in Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, so I traded Zach Wilson and 2 firsts for Zeke, McCaffrey, and Devin Singletary. And I think I always thought Zeke was a little bit of undervalued. Just like what Justin said, he finishes as an RB1 almost every single season. And that he is just the face of consistency in fantasy football. So we know last season, like, he even looked a little bit hurt. Like in some of the games, like he looked like he was running like an old man in some of the games. So like he was like hobbling to the sideline and then like didn't show that same burst and acceleration that he has in the past. And I think I read somewhere on Reddit where he maybe had like a slight like knee injury that he was dealing with the entire season. So to still finish as an RB1 while dealing with some sort of ligament strain in your knee, that's very, very impressive. And if he has a full offseason to recover and he comes back at full speed this season, I'm thinking Zeke is going to be a value in both redraft and in dynasty. So I'm definitely targeting him in a lot of my best ball leagues right now because he's going in like the 4th, 5th round. And if you can get an RB1 in that area, that's pretty good value.
Mm-hmm. And Justin, do you see Tony Pollard's work going up this year, or do you think it'll be the same level as it was last year? I know he saw an increase in his usage, looked pretty good with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it stays fairly similar. Josh brought up a really good point here that Zeke was injured, right? He had that knee injury that was hobbling him. He refused to kind of come out of games. He refused to take time off, which obviously shows his toughness. But at the end of the day, the Cowboys are trying to win a Super Bowl. So he needs to kind of figure that out as well. As a fan outside of fantasy football, he needs to figure out how to be healthy for the team down the stretch. But if he is healthy and nothing is wrong, I could see Zeke getting more than 237 carries. Could be in that 245, 255 range, potentially even higher, which I think does eventually take away from Tony Pollard. I think the good thing with Tony Pollard is that defenses aren't stacking the box for him. I don't have the exact numbers, but there was at one point last season where Zeke was facing stacked boxes or 8 boxes at least 33.4% of the time, where Tony Pollard was seeing that at only 18% of the time. So there is obviously a lot of correlation that goes into what defenses are doing when Pollard or Zeke is on the field. They're willing to let Pollard beat them if they have to. They're not willing to let Zeke do that. So I think that plays a major factor into it. If Zeke is healthy and is getting those carries, I think you see a little bit of a decline in Tony Pollard, but there is no question that Tony Pollard is electrifying when the ball is in his hands. And if he keeps producing the way that he is, and Zeke keeps producing the way that he is, we're going to see a shift mid-season. So as Josh said, I'm hoping Zeke still shows that first-round talent, specifically if you're getting him in the 4th or 5th round. But at the end of the day, I think that it's going to be close if Tony Pollard continues to produce.
And Kev, do you share similar thoughts with Zeke and with Tony Pollard moving forward?
I mean, Zeke's going as a running back 25 at keep trade cut, which that's running back 3. I think there's going to be value there for your contending teams to go after him in existing leagues, which is probably better to do it now rather than in season. The price is going to go up. I think startups as well, if you're fading running back early, maybe going for some sort of hero RB approach. I bet Elliott's there in the 5th and 6th rounds if you want to make it a little bit more secure and tighten up that running back room. So definite value for me at running back 25. Has he got long? I don't think so. I think you've got to treat Elliott a little bit like Derrick Henry. The fact that, yeah, he's maybe not going to be the league winner that he used to be, but he's still going to be so consistent and producing at such high level.
Yeah, love that. We'll stay with you, Kev, moving on to the wide receiver position.
Yeah, CD Lamb. Wide receiver 3 at keep trade cut. He's some people talk him up in that same tier as those top 2 guys. Some people compare him to other guys like T. Higgins. Just wondering, in Dynasty, do you have CD Lamb closer to Chase and Jefferson, or do you have him to a guy like T. Higgins based on value?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough question to ask me. I'm an Oklahoma Sooners fan too, as well. So
nice.
CeeDee Lamb is clear wide receiver 1. Chase and Jefferson are far behind him. There's no question. No, if we're talking about reality, I do believe that CeeDee Lamb possesses the talent structure to be more like a Chase and a Jefferson. Though Jefferson and Chase have both done way more in their limited careers than CeeDee has at this point, I think that you're going to see an explosion out of CeeDee Lamb this season. I think it's year 3 for him. He is now finally getting the kind of the number 1 look, and so I think you're going to really start to see an increase in there. The one thing that does concern me a little bit is that when he's on the field, there's not a ton that really kind of happens with him, unfortunately, up until this point, right? He had a 20.4% target share, which was 36th in the league. He ran only 486 routes, so 81% route participation, which was 48th in the league. He's not really getting deep targets. He only had 11 red zone targets for 5 receptions. That's 38th in the league. I think those things are all going to change a little bit. I think those numbers are going to increase. But what that also is going to show us is that his catch rate was only 65.8%. Now, obviously that equates to whether or not passes were catchable and his drops and things of that nature. But that number has to go up. He did have a pretty significant drop issue. He had the 6th most drops in the NFL last year at 6 or at 9, excuse me. So 7.5% of his targets were drops. That is a pretty significant number to me. And that catchable rate or that catch rate has got to go up if he does plan on getting into that kind of top 3 realm. But you mentioned T. Higgins, right? The big thing with T. Higgins is he's a big body, red zone target, can score touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb needs to start doing that if we're really going to even have a conversation with him on either side of the spectrum.
And Josh, do you share similar thoughts? Do you think he can get up with Chase and Jefferson this year and see a massive increase in his production?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the exact same page as Justin. Like, he definitely has the talent to get up there. We've seen him show flashes. There are times I think back to that winning catch against the Patriots that he had in overtime. It's a very, very impressive play where he shows that game-changing ability. But exactly as Justin has said, he hasn't eclipsed that much needed 25% target share number. And he does struggle with drops. So because he doesn't have that big body alpha receiver sort of build as T. Higgins does, he's going to need to create yards with his route running abilities, which I do believe that he possesses. And we'll just have to see this season because he has all the opportunity in the world. The Cowboys don't have a whole lot of other options now, as Gallup's going to start the season hurt. Cooper's gone. And so they're mostly going to rely on Schultz and CeeDee Lamb. So CeeDee Lamb's going to have to be a really big factor in their offense this season. Tolbert's going to have to come in there and contribute immediately too. So I'm really interested to see how the Cowboys shape up this season on offense. But it's CeeDee's make or break year. This is the year 3. Receivers are supposed to break out in their 3rd season. So we'll see if CeeDee Lamb can do it.
Love it.
I'm just going to say, if he doesn't do it this season, he's in real danger of sort of tanking his value a bit, and people might start. It actually reminds me a little bit of DJ Moore, the fact that there's been the hype and he doesn't hit, and then the hype starts again and he doesn't hit. So he's got to hit at some point. I think he will hit this season, but if he doesn't, he's not going to be wide receiver 3, I don't think, next off season.
Kev, is he your wide receiver 3 in Dynasty?
Yes, he is.
Sorry to jump in there.
No, it pains me to say, but I think he's got to be. I think if there is any one player that makes the jump into that top 3, into that top 2, sorry, it is CeeDee Lamb. Personally, I don't think he will, but I do think he'll have a good season. I think he'll solidify himself as wide receiver 3, maybe in a tier of his own.
I can see that. We'll move on to his teammate, wide receiver, and Michael Gallup. And just want to find out where you guys have got Michael Gallup ranked in Dynasty. His highest finish of wide receiver 22 came in 2019. Do you now see him being a regular top 24 producer in fantasy now that Amari Cooper's departed?
I'm going to say no. I really like Michael Gallup. I think he possesses kind of this hybrid approach of being able to stretch the field and being the guy that they rely on to go downfield and make plays, while also having kind of that high catch radius where he goes up and secures the ball and does really well in regards to that realm. However, we've mentioned it a couple of times. This offense is weird, right? The play calling is weird. The decision making is weird. Just look back at the last 13 seconds of our season and you'll know that it's weird, right? Michael Gallup coming off of a knee injury is pretty significant. People bounce back from that all the time. He is still young. I believe he's only 26 years old, just turned 26 in March. So 26 years old, he's, again, very solid, very trusted wide receiver in that room. And I think with that said, he's going to continue to get his targets. But CeeDee Lamb is essentially going to be taking over for that Amari Cooper role. And if that is the case, then I don't really see Michael Gallup changing, because Michael Gallup with Amari Cooper was still only getting, 59 receptions. Now, prior to the injury last year, he did have 100 targets in 2 straight seasons. So just like CeeDee Lamb, if that catch percentage can go up, he was at 58%, 58.4 and 56.2 in 2019 and 2020 respectively. If that catch percentage can go up and he's healthy and it works, he can absolutely get into that top 24 range, but he hasn't shown that he can do that yet. So that is, to me, the concern at this point. He needs to, if he's getting 100 plus targets, he needs to be getting 70 plus receptions out of that. And he's just not doing that right now. So if he can do that, yes, he can make the top 24, though I don't really see that happening yet. That would be a major jump in his 5th year in the NFL for him to be able to do that. And I just don't see that really happening. Not with this offense.
And Josh, are you high on Michael Gallup in Dynasty, or what do you see that his ceiling being?
Again, I'm on the exact same page as Justin. Michael Gallup, I've really liked him as a player. I've thought that he's been pretty undervalued over the past few seasons, and then especially going into this season. But my one worry with him this season is he decided to wait on getting knee surgery. So there are concerns with him being healthy for week 1 this season. So if he doesn't play, because let's say he starts on the PUP and he misses the first 6 games, then that is already going to put like a pretty big dent into his fantasy prospects this season. But he's the wide receiver 2 on the Cowboys offense. Typically that is a pretty productive position. And if he can take any sort of step up from the seasons that he's had in the past, then he's going to be a very productive asset for the games that he does play. He has that deep ball ability. He stretches the field. He wins contested catches. Dak seems to rely on him a pretty decent amount, and he trusts him to go up and get the ball. So I think he does see that jump in targets that Justin was alluding to. But again, we'll have to see how he comes back from his injury, because torn ACL, not the ideal situation for someone, but he just got his big contract, so maybe he's a little bit more motivated to go out there and win some contested catches, win some balls out there.
One last thing to add about Gallup. Right now, Fantasy Pros is showing him as the 43rd wide receiver being taken off the board. That's 109th in total. The way that I look at it is, let's say he is on the PUP and he misses the first 6 weeks. He's a league winner. If he can get back to 2019, where he had 59 receptions and 800 yards, if he can do that level of production over the final 10 games of the season, he's winning fantasy leagues for you, because you're getting him in the 43rd, or you're getting him 43rd wide receiver overall. So you're getting him really, really late as of drafts being done right now. So I think that is a big key for him. Again, I don't think he's top 24, but if he can put on that kind of production and he can put on top 30 production in the final 8 weeks of the season, whatever it might be, I think he can win a lot of leagues as your wide receiver 3 or one of your flex options for sure.
Yeah, I think going along with that, I think his value right now is probably the lowest it's going to be. As soon as he comes back in the lineup and he is that wide receiver 2 on the Dallas offense, his value is immediately going to go up without even seeing a target. So yeah, maybe he's a cheap target to go for in Dynasty right now. And we'll move on to the tight end position. And Kev absolutely loves this guy. So over to you, Kev.
I absolutely do love this guy, Dalton Schultz. If you're so lucky enough, like me in several leagues, to pick him up off waivers in a lot of places early on last season, you'll have that same affinity as I do to him. So he got the 1-year franchise tag to stick around in Dallas. I think I would have preferred a long-term deal, but I'm not going to cry at that. Cooper's not there now. I just think Titan 9, it's really an interesting price point. Is he a guy that you're going after at the cost of Titan 9 as exposure into this offense?
100%. There's no question that Dalton Schultz is this offense, in my opinion, right? And we talked a lot about everything that's gone on. CD obviously is going to get the yards. He's going to hit the 1,100 yards. He's going to get, your 8 to 10 touchdowns as your number one. Michael Gallup will obviously do his thing. But this offense, outside of the volume, of course, right? Because the volume wasn't there in the mid 2000s. This offense reminds me a lot of that Tony Romo, Jason Witten led offense, where Jason Witten is running out 5-yard routes, sitting down at the first down line, making a reception, and then moving upfield. Dalton Schultz has that similar feel to me. Again, there are more pieces in this offense than there was in the days of Tony Romo and Jason Witten. So Schultz is not Jason Witten. Please don't get that wrong. I'm not comparing the two.
He's better.
I'm comparing the type of offense, right? With the way that Dak uses Dalton Schultz as a security blanket. He's easily lost in the scuffle of that offense. There's a lot of times that you just see him slip away, but at the same time, he's also a sure-handed tight end, very similar to what Jason Witten was. 75% of his passes were caught last year on 104 targets. That is an insane number. He did have 10.4 yards per reception. That's also an insane number for a tight end. We're looking at him kind of tight end 9, I think you had mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. Look it up real quick here. Yeah. Tight end 8, according to Fantasy Pros ADP at this present moment. I think he can this year eclipse top 5 numbers. That's just how good Dalton Schultz is at not only kind of being sneaky in his route running, but his security in catching the ball and his ability to turn upfield. I think we're going to see a big jump for Schultz. My problem with that as a Cowboy fan is it's going to also warrant a big contract at the end of the season. And I don't know if we're going to be really in the position to be able to do that. So we'll see what happens there. But for at least 2022, Dalton Schultz is a must-have for tight end. Absolute must.
Josh, are you as high as Justin on Dalton Schultz heading into next season?
Unfortunately, yes, I am. I hate to say it, but I was scooping up Dalton Schultz everywhere in my dynasty startups last year in the 23rd, 24th round. And he paid off big. What I saw from Dalton Schultz last year, very reminiscent of Jason Witten, just as Justin said. And he doesn't seem to be the most athletic guy, but he just makes plays. He's just a football player. He's very, very reliable. He has sure hands. He knows where the sticks are. He gets in the end zone. He finds the soft spot in the zone. He does everything that you want out of a pass catching tight end. And if Gallup starts the year on the pup, Schultz could be seeing 9, 10, 11 targets a game in the first 6 weeks. And that's going to lead to some real fantasy numbers, especially if he's maintaining that 75% catch rate. That's going to be something to behold in the first 6 weeks. So I'm excited to have Dalton Schultz on my teams this year. In redraft and best ball leagues, he's going a little bit higher than where I would like to draft him. I've been seeing him going in like the 6th, 7th round. I feel a little bit more comfortable taking Schultz in like the 8th round. Then you get like a little bit more value, get your RB2, wide receiver 2, all settled out there. But I do like Dalton Schultz for the season. I think he'll be a great fantasy producer. And I'm excited to see what he can do as the number 2 option in this offense with Gallagher for the first 6 weeks.
This has got to be music to your ears, Kev, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. I'm just going to say this. When he outproduces George Kittle, I'm going to be unsufferable. Honestly, I'm going to be all over the place. Fuck it.
Yeah, we're going to clip that. We
Or is
better
it
move
insufferable?
on.
I think it's insufferable, not unsufferable. I got a bit excited then. Sorry.
We'll move on now to the Commanders, a team that you love, Kev. And we'll start with the quarterback position. We've got to talk about Carson Wentz. How much for you of an upgrade is Carson Wentz from Taylor Heineke last year? Carson Wentz finished as quarterback 14 last season. Would you be happy with him as your quarterback 2 on a super flex team in Dynasty right now?
I have mixed feelings about Carson Wentz. Back in like 2018, when he was leading that run for the Eagles, I thought Carson Wentz was an MVP level quarterback. I thought he was great. He was making incredible throws, and then he got hurt. He was on an MVP tear, tore his ACL, and we haven't really seen that same level of play from him since. I've heard some issues around his leadership, and that's why he kind of moved out of Indianapolis. Like the locker room didn't support him. So if he can figure that out and get back to the same level of play, Carson Wentz is the best quarterback that the Commanders have had in the past, I don't know how many years, maybe since RG3. Because Kirk Cousins, he never was really it for us. I'll always remember the play where there was like 5-10 seconds left on the clock, about to go into halftime, and Kirk Cousins is supposed to spike the ball, and instead he knees it. And that was kind of like the culmination of who Kirk Cousins is as a quarterback. He's just not clutch. He can't win games. So if Carson Wentz can start winning games for us, then that's all like I'll really be happy about. In terms of fantasy, I don't know if I'm too happy with Carson Wentz as my QB2. I've been looking to acquire him just because I like the speculation. I like the fact that there's potential because he's been productive in his career as a fantasy quarterback. Last year, threw for 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 3,500 yards, and that was a bad year for him. QB 14. That's pretty solid for a QB2. So I think that he's a pretty safe and reliable quarterback 2 option. If you're looking to win a league, obviously you want your quarterback 2 to break that QB 12 threshold. But I think that he has the potential to breach that if our offense can figure it out.
And Justin, are you high on Carson Wentz at all? Would you be looking to move off him? Do you think he's a safe quarterback right now? They drafted a rookie over there in Sam Howell?
2022 safe, yes. Sam Howell obviously is not ready for that position. I think 2022, 2023, I think Carson Wentz is a very safe quarterback. According to Fantasy Pros ADP, he's 25th off the board, 25th quarterback off the board. He finished as a QB 14, according to Fantasy Pros PPR scoring last year. That was 5 spots ahead of Taylor Heineke. Now, Heineke only played in 16 games, but even if he played in that 17th game, it still wouldn't have touched it. So Carson Wentz is definitely a more talented quarterback. I think the one thing that Josh was right on the head with is that Carson Wentz has never really been that great. And I know that it's going to be blasphemy to a lot of Philly fans in 2017 when he was third in MVP voting and all that kind of stuff. But he only had 253 yards per game in that season before going down. So he was efficient, but he wasn't a stat producer. We're talking fantasy. Stat production is all the thing that matters. Washington's offensive line is good. They're not Indianapolis good. So Heineke got sacked 7.1% of the time. Wentz only sacked 5.3% of the time. I think that is going to play a factor in it a little bit, though the wide receiving options are significantly better in Washington. So I still very much am on the Carson Wentz train as a QB2. If I'm playing some weird 0 QB situation, I'm perfectly fine taking Carson Wentz as my QB1 if I'm also going to secure one of the other guys in that same range as well, right? He can produce respectively. He's not going to get you, Tom Brady numbers or Dak Prescott numbers, but QB 14, I think he's right there. And I think he could see a bump to top 12 based on who he's got around him in that offense.
Yeah, I love that. And Kev, as the resident Eagles fan, your best place to tell us about Carson Wentz. What version of Wentz are we going to get on the Commanders?
It's going to sound like sour grapes, to be honest. I mean, I think Justin's going to be happy to see him back in the NFC East to play in his Cowboys again. But I think for fantasy, when he plays, he's absolutely fine. If we're just looking at this from a fantasy point of view and you're not factoring anything else, he's a fine QB2. He's going to get you the points you need. He's going to be a high-end QB2. He is better than Taylor Heineke. The issue I've got is it didn't work out in Philly because it was clashing. It lost the locker room, we'll say. Same in Indy. When he went to Indy, he worked under Frank Reich, who was with him at Philadelphia. So if he's given up on him after one season and they paid, 2 firsts for him, that's a warning sign. I think if you've got him, he's fine for this season, but I am worried about him long term. I think he's on his 3rd team. If he messes up here, will he get another chance?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. We'll move swiftly on to the running back position and over to you, Kev, for your question.
Do you know what? I love Antonio Gibson. I know you do too, Ali. Just really sour feeling towards him at the moment. He's dropped down to running back 17 at keep trade cut. The Commanders are flirting with running backs all off-season. There was talk of maybe going after Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker in the draft, and they had every running back on earth in for visits pre-draft. So the writing was on the wall for them, and they added Brian Robinson. I just want to know, running back 17, are you happy to go after him at that cost, or is the concern with his profile? Is he going to be the long-term running back in Washington?
So Antonio Gibson's my guy. He is my guy. I have his jersey. I go to a lot of the Commanders games, and he's my guy. In terms of him being RB17, I personally think that that's a value. The past 2 seasons, he's finished as RB12 and RB13, so he's never finished below that. And I think that he's going to take a step forward this season. Even though they did add Brian Robinson and they were looking at all these other running backs, I don't think that speaks too much on Antonio Gibson per se, but they've been looking to replace that Peyton Barber sort of role. I know Peyton Barber, the past few seasons, they've kind of been that grinder, in between. So when we're in between the 20s, we're looking to have just some grinder to come in and just give Antonio Gibson a spell. And that's kind of what we added in Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson fits that exact mold. He's this big back who can just take the grinding first, second down runs in between the 20s just to spell Antonio Gibson every now and then. So Antonio Gibson, I think, will still maintain his role. Actually, last year he played almost the entire season with a fracture in his shin. So if he's able to still produce as the RB13 with a broken leg, that's I think he'll be pretty good this season with a fully intact leg this season. Was a little bit disappointed to see J.D. McKissic come back, even though I love J.D. McKissic, but from an Antonio Gibson fantasy football perspective, I would have loved to see him be in that receiving role as well. So I think Antonio Gibson still stays in that between that RB8 and RB12 range, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited for him this season.
And Justin, do you share them thoughts? Do you think RB17 is a value for Gibson, or do you think that's about right?
No, I think it's a massive value. I think we're looking at top 8 running back here in 2022. I think Gibson. The biggest issue with Gibson was he had an increase in production in terms of volume, but a decrease in production in terms of yards per attempt. So it went from 4.7 yards per attempt in 2020 to 4 yards per attempt last year. He did see 8-man boxes 18% of the time, so that does obviously factor in, but it is one of kind of like the average numbers if you look at some of the other running backs in that range. So nothing too crazy. However, as Josh mentioned, broken leg, that is obviously going to be a factor in there as well. But Washington was also down a lot, right? There's a reason why they were a top 10 draft pick. Taylor Heineke is their quarterback. He is throwing the ball more because he has to throw the ball more, and they're taking Gibson out of plays and out of sequence often because he wasn't really or they weren't really moving the ball. I think that changes with Carson Wentz. I think defenses have to factor in for the quarterback position. I think Logan Thomas being healthy comes back is a good sign. The addition of Jahan Dotson is a good sign for Gibson to continue to get the volume in terms of the number of carries. I think it was 255, 258 carries he had last year. I think he still gets that number. On a healthy leg, I think you're getting 4.5, 4.6 yards per carry. And if you're looking at those particular numbers, you're looking at top 8, top 10 easy. So if he's at 17 in terms of ADP, I think it's a massive value. And he's still super young. I think the one question mark I have is, as Josh was alluding to, is J.D. McKissick and Robinson. I envision J.D. McKissick to be very much a Darren Sproles type of role for Carson Wentz. The guy that's going to come in on third down is going to get those pass catching opportunities. We know that Gibson is known for that, though. So if the team is trying to play who's healthy, who's fresh, who's clean and ready to go, I think you're going to see McKissick take some of those pass catching opportunities from Gibson. Though again, year 3, I'm hoping that's not necessarily the case. But I absolutely envision top 8 opportunity for him this season, and I'm definitely very high on Gibson for sure in dynasty leagues.
Certainly music to my ears. Kev, are you high on Gibson? Because I don't think you've always been the highest on Gibson out of us 3, have you?
I've been high in it. I've been pretty reactive this off season with the fact that there was talk of a lot of guys going after a lot of guys. Just doubt if he can be the main man. But do you know what? I'm going to listen to our guests on today's show. I'm going to move him back up and be a little bit more confident in him. If you do look back, 2 top 13 seasons to begin his career, and he played wide receiver in college. So, yeah, I maybe just need to take a step back and get back on the Gibson train.
Yeah, love that. Bit of advice to take away. We'll move on to the wide receiver position now, and I might get pelters here, but Terry McLaurin we're going to move on to. I'm personally not his biggest fan. I've got him ranked down at wide receiver 24 in Dynasty. So are you guys much higher than me? I looked at a trade this morning on the DLF website, and he was dealt straight up for Drake London. Which side of that trade would you two be on?
Yeah, I mean, as a football player, as a guy, I love Terry McLaurin. From a fantasy football perspective, it's hard to get behind him. I know. So this year, he's going to have the best quarterback of his entire career. So I expect that to boost his numbers, and he's probably going to finish I expect him to finish his best fantasy season of his career. What's his best finish? Like wide receiver 17?
It's around about 20-ish, yeah.
Wide receiver 20? Okay. I think he can finish within that high-end wide receiver 2 range between like wide receiver 14 to 18. So at wide receiver 24, I think he's a value. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 in our offense. There's going to be other options in our offense to take away coverage from him, because in the past, it's literally only been him. So we have Jahan Dotson now. Hopefully Curtis Samuel is healthy as well. And we should have a pretty high-powered offense. We have a lot of weapons that Carson Wentz can distribute the ball to. We have a decent offensive line. Be able to run the ball with Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, move the ball with J.D. McKissick. So I'm very excited for this offense. In terms of the trade, I'm always one for just taking the proven talent over someone who's unproven and betting on the potential. While I do think Drake London has the potential to, the ceiling is higher than Terry McLaurin's. Terry McLaurin is going to be a proven asset this season. He's going to have those numbers. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. So I would take the Terry McLaurin side if I'm on a contending team. If I'm in a rebuilding situation, then I would pivot towards a Drake London because Drake London has that higher ceiling. He's got guaranteed targets coming this season. He should be the wide receiver 1 in that offense. And we'll get to really see what he's made out of. The Falcons should have a pretty high pick next season. They might have the 1 or 2, and they could go get CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. And then that could be really, really exciting for Drake London's prospects. So those are my 2 cents on that trade right there.
And Justin, what side of that trade would you land on? And are you high on Terry McLaurin in Dynasty?
Yeah, I am. I'm very high on Terry McLaurin, but there's some hesitation in those expectations a little bit on my end. First, let's kind of talk about the trade. I'm still very much in the Terry McLaurin trade. Rookie hype is always real right after they're drafted. These guys are always Hall of Famers the second that they, are picked on the end of April. And a lot of people are going to, rush to that judgment. Josh is correct. If the Falcons turn from Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota into CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, then obviously we're going to be starting to look at more value out of Drake London. But those are a bunch of ifs. We don't know how Mariota is going to play. We don't know what Ridder is in the NFL. I don't envision the Falcons taking a quarterback if they haven't seen what Ridder can do yet. So if Ridder doesn't play this year because Mariota is the one that they're leaning on, I don't know if next year is the year that the Falcons go after a quarterback. And then what do you have, right? Now you've got Ridder and an unknown, and we don't know what's happening. And again, a lot of ifs. No one knows what's actually going to happen. Because if we did, we wouldn't be sitting here. We'd be in a general manager's office, right? But that's the thing on Drake London. There's always rookie hype. They're always Hall of Famers within the first month of getting drafted. We just don't know what they're inevitably going to be, right? Could he be Kadarius Toney? Could he be Jamar Chase? We have no clue. With that being said, though, Terry McLaurin has very much a Michael Gallup feel to me. Target shares, catch rate is right around the same amount. I think it was 58% last year. He had 130 targets last year, 134 targets the year before, but he's getting less than 80 receptions. That number has to obviously go up. Quarterback play is going to obviously play a major role in that. Just looking at his player profile, his QB rating per target was 75th in the league, right? That is a disgusting number for a guy that we expect to be a number 1. His true catch rate was 81.9%. That's 56th in the league. His catchable target rate was 71.8%. 94 of his 134 targets he had last year were catchable. That's 70th in the league. Those numbers are disgusting, right? Carson Wentz changes those numbers. Now, does he change them so drastically that all of a sudden Terry McLaurin is a wide receiver 1? No. But could he be mid of the pack wide receiver 2? Absolutely. And for that reason, I've got him higher than wide receiver 22, which I believe is what you had him at there. But I also have him kind of in that range of where Fantasy Pros ADP has him at wide receiver 15. I think he has more upside. He has to catch more passes. Granted, I think that's going to get better simply because the quarterback position is going to get better, but he does need to catch more passes. So that's just my thought there on Terry McLaurin. I still have him kind of in that 15, 16, 17 range rather than late wide receiver 2, but he has the upside of getting up there for sure.
Yeah, agreed. We'll talk about his new teammate now, and over to you, Kev.
Yeah, Dotson, the rookie. He's currently 112 in rookie drafts, going behind guys that have got lower draft capital, players like Sky Moore, George Pickens, Christian Watson. 112 in rookie drafts. Do you think that ADP is right or wrong?
I think that that's about right. In most of my rookie drafts, he's actually been falling into the second round. As much as I want him to be good, I want him to be a great fantasy receiver. I want him to be a great receiver in the NFL. I really questioned the pick that when we took Jahan Dotson. I was excited at 11 because we had at 11 we had the option of Jameson Williams, we had the option of Chris Olave, we could have even taken Kyle Hamilton if we wanted a safety. And we decided to trade out of it, and all three of those guys got taken. There were rumors that Jahan Dotson was the guy that we wanted all along, so maybe that there's something that they know that we don't know. And I typically like to lean on the guys in the front offices. They typically know what they're doing. But oh man, Jahan Dotson, they just gave me PTSD of Josh Doxson. Like the name sounds so
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's very frustrating just as a Commanders fan to take a receiver in the first round and his name sounds so similar to Josh Doxson. But going on to some actual data, I actually input all of the rookie receivers into a regression model. And unfortunately, it had Jahan Dotson at like a 50% bust probability, which I really didn't like. So I haven't been trying to target him anywhere in any of my rookie drafts. He's a wide receiver 2 on Commanders. It's typically not a productive position. And I don't know. We'll have to see. My model really liked Jahan Dotson as a wide receiver 2. It had him as the number 1 wide receiver in terms of probability of reaching wide receiver 2 numbers. So he should be a solid wide receiver 2 for us, just not that wide receiver 1 asset that you're looking for in your rookie drafts, such as a Sky Moore or a George Pickens.
And Justin, do you agree? Have you picked up any Jahan Dotson in rookie leagues at all? Do you think 112 is fair?
To be honest with you, no. I have not. I have kind of avoided him slightly in most of my drafts. Even in like when I've seen him on the board at 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, I've really kind of passed on him. There's a couple of question marks that I have. The first is size. He's only 5'11". Granted, we understand the whole weight ratio thing with the whole Devontae Smith nonsense from last year. Doesn't matter. But he's 5'11". He's 181 pounds. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because a lot of times that you see these smaller framed, smaller heighted wide receivers, you're expecting burners. He had a respectable 4.43 40-yard dash. But that was still 12th in the NFL this season for wide receivers. And it wasn't even top 30 in overall 40-yard dash numbers, top 33 in overall dash numbers, right? So for someone who's 5'11" and he's not going to burn speed past people, I'm a little concerned that he might get lost in the shuffle a little bit within that offense, simply because you're not really going to be able to see him. He'll get covered as linebackers are getting faster and faster. He is going to be covered sometimes by linebackers and safeties who can move. And so I'm concerned about that a little bit. The other concern for me is someone we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and that's Logan Thomas. I'm super high on Logan Thomas. I think Logan Thomas very much has a Zach Ertz type feel with Carson Wentz as the guy here. And I'm going to see, or I believe we are going to see more targets going to a healthy Logan Thomas. And I think that's going to bite into Jahan Dotson. So I agree. I'm probably not taking him 112. And I mean, I haven't taken him 112 when I've been in that position to do so. And there's definitely some concerns in terms of his size and his ultimate speed. Excuse me. Yep. Player profile has him compared to Tyler Lockett, and I ultimately just don't see it. And granted, height and weight are right exactly where they are, but Tyler Lockett is faster, and so I think he's going to not really kind of put up that kind of comparison. But who knows? We'll see.
Well, you led us nicely onto the final question. We'll make it brief, this one, but is there any interest in Logan Thomas at a discount this offseason? I think you might alluded to you might have some interest. Obviously finished as the tight end 3 in 2020. He's currently going as the tight end 32 on Keep Trade Cut. So do you think that's a a big value for Logan Thomas?
Yeah, I got to hop as soon as I answer this question. I got to go to my brother's college graduation. But yeah, I think he's definitely a value at tight end 32. He'll have the opportunity easily to finish in the top 12 tight ends, just as Justin was saying. It's not like a difficult threshold to break. I mean, even when he did finish as tight end 3 back in 2020, 72 receptions, 670 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's not groundbreaking numbers or anything. And I think he should be able to put up those numbers pretty easily this season, especially with someone like Jahan Dotson as a wide receiver too. He's still going to be learning the offense. So Carson Wentz is going to lean on someone who's 6'7", 6'6", like Logan Thomas. Pretty big guy, can catch anything, can jump out of a building. So I think that Logan Thomas will definitely be able to provide plenty of value at tight end 32. But hey guys, I really appreciate you guys having me on. Got to run now, and I really enjoyed the show.
Thanks for coming on, Josh. Take care.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye.
And Justin, you alluded to you're a big fan of. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But I love Logan Thomas. I was high on him last year. Going in, obviously, coming off of a tight end 3 with his ADP last year, I thought it was a no-brainer to go after and get. And we were right for the most part for the first 6 games of the season until he went down and was out for the rest of the year. His catch percentage went up from 65.5% in 2020 to 72%. His yards per reception went up from 2020 to 2021 by 1.6 yards per reception. So he was on pace to shatter his numbers in 2020, which got him a TE3 number. He had 3 touchdowns in the first 6 games of the season last year, where compared to 6 in the year previously. He is getting a massive upgrade in his receiving options. He's getting a massive upgrade in his quarterback option. And I think you're going to see a massive move forward for Logan Thomas. I was high on Dalton Schultz. I am high on Logan Thomas. I am absolutely taking Dalton Schultz as my TE1. I am absolutely taking Logan Thomas as my TE2. And I'm very much going up and getting him before that TE32 range that you were talking about earlier. I love Thomas. I think he's going to be great. And I think he's going to be great with Carson Wentz as a quarterback who loves his tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, tight end 32 is going behind the likes of Harrison Bryant, Austin Hooper, and Adam Troutman. I mean, that's definitely screams a bit of value for me, certainly. That's pretty crazy. And with that, we've got to thank you, Justin and Josh, for coming on. Been fantastic guests. So do you just want to plug where we can find you, and is anything that you're up to at the minute?
So nothing that I'm directly up to at this present moment, but you can find me on Twitter at jmanff or _FF, part of the Undroppables video production team. So check out our YouTube at the Undroppables, and you'll kind of see some really great stuff that we're doing this off season. So really want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to join you guys today. Really enjoyed talking football, and I certainly love talking the Cowboys, specifically with 2 NFC East fans in front of me, because you guys both know you're going to lose. So it really stinks to know that. So I apologize. Again, thank you very much for having me, guys. This is a great opportunity for both myself and for this charity, and I really wish you guys the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ooh, sneak preview. Let's bring back the lad.
Hello,
Matt. Short stint off.
Yeah, fully refreshed. Update on my eating. A couple of slices of toast to see me through for the next couple of hours.
Anything on your toast?
A little bit of butter, nothing else, nothing exciting. Ran to the shop as well, got some Mountain Dew, so all stocked up again, ready for the next stint. Absolutely.
Cracking, we've got some absolute studs up next.
That tease.
Yeah, that's the tease. just waiting for Ali to go, and then we can get this.
I'm waiting for you to kick me off, mate. I know how much you like it.
Right, see you on the other side.
Yeah, see you later.
See ya.
Cut him off a little bit short then, but never mind.
You do right. I mean, this is our segment, Kev. This is the one we've been waiting for.
I've got to say, Matt, the two teams we're talking about, it fits very well with our personalities. And the
Absolutely.
two guests we've got on, I mean, they've both been on the Fantasy Wildcard podcast this year. One of them gave you plenty of stick. The other one heckled all my picks. So it was really fun having him on the podcast. We enjoyed it so much. We do like a bit of punishment. So we enjoyed it that much. We've got him back for the Streamathon. We're talking about the Giants and the Eagles to wrap up the NFC East. Two amazing guests we've got, and I'll bring them in now. We've got Katie and Chad from UTH Dynasty. How are you both doing?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We're used to recording together, but we got a full booth here, four man.
Yeah, we love that. We're going to wrap up the NFC East. It's the best division, obviously, as I'm an Eagles fan and Matt's a Giants fan. And we'll jump straight in with the Giants. And what better way to start than Matt taking it off for his team?
Absolutely. We'll start with the best team, obviously, and then we'll move on to that not so great team after. But yeah, starting with the Giants in the quarterback position. Obviously, we know Daniel Jones in the last year of his contract. We know the Giants didn't pick up that 5th-year option. So I just want to know what you guys think. What does Daniel Jones have to do for him to maintain this starting job moving forward? Do you think there's any chance, or are we now looking at 2023 rookie quarterbacks for the Giants?
I think that Daniel Jones is exactly who he was in college the day he was drafted from the Giants. If you look at his stats through 3 years at Duke and then through 3 years with the Giants, they're almost identical. 8,000-ish yards with an average of 6.4, 6.2, which is very, very low for a quarterback. Touchdowns, 52 to 29, 45 to 29. I mean, the fruit isn't falling far from the tree. So he is who they thought he was. The question is he a leader? Is he a winner? If they don't win a playoff game, I think he's done.
Yeah, expectations are certainly high. You talk about how much they've added to the skill positions around him. Tight end might be a little bit of a black hole, but otherwise, healthy Saquon Barkley. They're talking him up in the passing game. Wan'Dale Robinson should be some easy targets, some easy yards if they utilize them that way. And the key number I look at for quarterbacks that's pretty predictive of job security is the touchdown and interception rate ratio. And Daniel Jones far below the baseline, and he's definitely in that. Don't be surprised if he loses his job. This is a critical year, and basically these two teams both have critical quarterbacks to have their best season yet passing the ball. Daniel Jones, in ball security as well as staying healthy are some of his bugaboos too. I'd be surprised, honestly, if Daniel Jones kept the job in 2023.
Yeah, I feel like you might have said that, Chad. To be honest, I'm in the same boat. While he could have that upside in fantasy, we know he's got that rushing ability. I think in terms of an actual NFL quarterback, even as a Giants fan, although I want him to succeed, I think I agree with you. I feel like it's going to be another tough year. A lot of Giants fans seem to think that, seeing as we had such a good Giants draft, usually it's never that way for a Giants fan. But I feel like we're still going to struggle next year, and we know that at the top end of that 2023 QB class, there's definitely some guys there that we could be looking at. And yeah, I think I agree. I think Daniel Jones, this is the last year, and I don't feel like there's anything he can really do to keep that job.
Do you think that QB 28, where he's currently going at keep trade cut, that's exciting potentially as a QB 3 if you've got two studs to maybe shoot for upside as someone that could potentially, if he does hit, the value increases? Is that an option, or is it just he's off the board in all formats?
He's off the board for me. I think that your QB3, I think you can do better when you talk about 25 to maybe 30 quarterbacks off the board. You know, that you can look at plenty of options. Like that's not too far past Jameis Winston, for example. I think he's got more upside. And you look at the pedigree, you look at his best in the NFL, and that's way better than Daniel Jones. You even look, if you want to take a shot, you know, you're thinking young guy. You know, I usually go older guys like the Matt Ryans of the world, but Davis Mills would be someone where you say he's getting a full-on shot, and really the expectations aren't quite as high in Houston as they are with the Giants and Daniel Jones at a critical point of his rookie contract.
And I don't know what you mean by upside. Again, he is what he was in college. He's not a big rusher. 6.2 yards per attempt. That's anemic. That's horrible. And he's not going to get better. He's done that for 6 years in a row. The die is cast. Move on.
I think you must have a lot of influence
Ominous.
to keep Jake Cut to
Ominous.
get him down there.
Katie's hitting the cut button. Katie's hitting the cut button over and over. Give me more Daniel Jones. I want it. Cut.
Matt, how about you, Matt? As the Giants fan, do you think there is a chance for him?
No, personally, I don't. Like I said, as a person, as a player, I don't mind him, but he's not an NFL franchise starting quarterback.
Well, and one thing to add, Tyrod Taylor, the guy that kicks around a lot, he's a little worrisome because that's not just a day 3 flyer that we have not seen at quarterback. He is a veteran that if they start out 2-4, maybe they turn over and say, we got a shot. Our defense is playing a little better. Tyrod Taylor could be a stabilizing force. That would scare me a little bit from a job security of we're trying to finish this season and maybe push for the playoffs in what should be a pretty contracted and competitive NFC East.
Absolutely. I mean, Kev, I'm just going to say before we move on, I'm worried because Kate is coming out all guns blazing already, and I'm worried about because we're on the Giants and this is my team, and Katie, she's coming out.
Well, I'm sorry, but you also brought a Cowboys fan in to talk about the Giants and the Eagles.
I know we should have learned from his mistakes when we had you on, Katie. This is never going to end well.
I just wish it was Trubisky that landed there instead of Tyrod Taylor. I think it'd been a nice fit with Dable again, but never mind. That's just because I quite like Trubisky. Swiftly moving on to the running back spot, Saquon Barkley. He has flashed major upside in the past. Obviously, he had a few injuries as well. So I'm going to throw a scenario at you now that you only want a contender. He's running back 14. And you are concerned, you're worried about the injury, worried about his contract being up soon, potentially getting traded. Running back 14 is on your squad. What would be your pivot off Saquon Barkley on a contending team?
Yeah, I actually like the price point, so I would be open to pivoting towards him. I think that when you talk about running back, and my go-to line is everybody's injury prone until they're not. I think Leonard Fournette for 2, 3, 4 years had that moniker, and what have we seen? Largely stayed healthy the past couple of years, been an impact player. And Saquon Barkley, we know and we've seen that dynamic play for 12, 14 games in a season. And I know that was a few years ago, but your health, you can change the course of how people think of you for the injury prone label, which you talk to anyone in the medical space of fantasy and they pretty much say, it's random, that there might be some injury prone players, but I mean, unless you're in there and you're their doctor, you're not going to have really any sense of that on like, oh, it's his lefty and that's balky and, that's always going to cause problems. It's really tough to decipher that. So I'm a buyer. I think there's a lot of guys, Saquon Barkley being one of them outside the top 10, where you say, is there big elite upside here? And Barkley's one that you say, yes. He can change your team. Just to say, wins over replacement. He can be a 2 win over replacement player. And there's not a lot of running backs, not a lot of players in general that can do that. So pivoting, if I were to pivot, so to answer your question directly, I would go downward and I would try to get a plus. Now, the guys I like are maybe 1 to 2 year, probably 2 year plays projecting ahead. Guys like James Conner, Ezekiel Elliott, and Leonard Fournette, all outside running back 20. So if you are going to pivot, I wouldn't go Barkley plus and go up. I would rather go Barkley minus and go downward to those guys and say, can I get about the same production in the top 5, top 10 with ceiling there over the next couple of seasons? I'm getting a little older, but maybe could I pick up a first round pick? So now I've got options of I could win it in the next couple of years. And then I've got the pick coming at some point to level the deal, even if I don't win it.
And I agree with Chad. I would not be selling Saquon. I don't think you can get what he's worth. And I'd rather have him do average on my team than go off on somebody else's team in the league. We're all in the league. Nobody's going to pay you his full value. And dynasty owners have to be patient through the ebbs and flows of the career arc. And he's somebody worth being patient for, I believe. And he does have some big games. And talk about upside and explosiveness. I'd rather have him on my team, even if I have to be patient through some bad spells and injuries.
Yeah, Matt, Barkley thoughts. Are you happy with him? Are you looking to acquire more of him, or have you got too much of him already as a Giants fan?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I put my Saquon Barkley jersey on because I absolutely love this guy. Obviously, being the Giants fan that I'm trying not to be too much of a homer, but yeah, I mean, the guys both hit it. This is a guy that we know has got that elite upside. As a rookie, came in and finishes the RB1 in fantasy. I mean, he's just unreal when healthy, but that is just obviously the caveat, the health issues. It's been a tough few years, never getting that full season out of it. It was great to see last year that he managed to bump up those numbers. I believe played 13 games last year, so signs that he's slowly coming back. And I mean, he was coming off serious injury, so I feel like it does take time. And while the running back position, we know you don't really have much time in regards to how long running backs stick around in the NFL. This is a guy talent-wise that's right up there with the very best of them. Like Katie said, this is a guy that you wouldn't be shocked if he finished RB1 last year just because of the situation he's in and the talent as well. So, yeah, if I've got him, I'm holding him, maybe because I'm a biased Giants fan, but also because of the upside that we know he's got in both receiving and running the ball.
And this is the year, he's at 25 and he's at a critical point of if he puts up a big year, he's going to be insulated for another year or two, dynasty wise. But if he gets hurt, misses half the year, wasn't super productive for the other half, man, he could drop maybe to the 20s. We've seen that go to 26 years old. It's been a while since he's had that big year. But I think, like you said, another year removed from the injury, and I think he's going to be good to go. Now, injury could befall anybody, but man, I think it is aligning for him to be top 5, top 8 this year.
Yeah, if he has another bad season, he could be like Leonard Fournette before the big breakout in Tampa. I do like Saquon. I'm gravitating towards him in startups and looking at him in existing leagues. I made a trade towards the end of the last season. I managed to move from Dalvin Cook to Saquon and a 23 first, and I was like, absolute money. And then the league folded. So, I was a bit gutted about that. But nevertheless, it was nice for me to know that I made a legendary trade like that. So
I think the situation's interesting as well, obviously, with it being his final year, that 5th year that we've taken up. This is a team that we're improving on O-line as well. This is what you need from your running backs. Our O-line has been dreadful is an understatement of how bad we've been as a team on his O-line. So the fact that everything seems to be falling in place. This is a year, like Chad said, that he needs to show it. He's out trying to earn that big contract, hopefully, to go into next year. So yeah, I'm still excited about Saquon.
And we're going to come now to another guy that you're becoming more excited about, aren't you, Matt?
Yeah, definitely coming round on him. It's Wan'Dale Robinson. We picked him in the 2nd round. This is when alarm bells rang out. I had no understanding why we took him there at that spot when there's guys like George Pickens on the board, Sky Moore. I was shocked that we took him as well. How similar profiles to Kadarius Toney, obviously, we took in the 1st round the year before. So I'm just interested to know, out of those two guys, who was your own in Dynasty? Kadarius Toney, we know there's potential issues there in terms of how he is as a person. I've heard lots of rumours that maybe he's not the greatest guy. And then there's Wan'Dale Robinson, who obviously we've picked in round 2. And as I say, very similar in terms of how they profile. So yeah, who would you prefer in Dynasty right now?
Neither one, but Tony is the starter. And, the thing is as long as you've got Daniel Jones as a quarterback, he hasn't been over 300 completions in any of his seasons yet. They're projecting him this year for 340 completions out of 5. He's going to throw the ball 560 times this year. Right. If that happens, there's not enough targets to feed everybody. Tony is at least the starter. I think Robinson is depth. I'm not that thrilled about Robinson as a player anyway. I've been avoiding him in rookie drafts. There's so many other players in his range that I'd rather own. So I've got 0 shares. I've got 0 shares of Tony either, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you look at them and Kadarius Toney, round 1 pedigree, and that matters a lot. Wan'Dale Robinson going in the 2nd round. The good news is he was productive. The good news is there's some positives about his profile, but he's tiny, and we've seen big flashes. I think it was 1 to 2 games out of Kadarius Toney where he looked like a game changer. Someone that can at least put up a big ceiling. And so I go back to 2 points. What data points do we have? Wan'Dale Robinson is a day 2 wide receiver incoming, and we've seen nothing. We have no idea. So we're flying blind on him, relatively speaking. Kadarius Toney, he's at least avoided the bust moniker, and not bust on the off-field sense or attitude sense or any of that stuff, but bust in terms of if you finish in year 1 at like wide receiver 120, you are on the N'Keal Harry track of we don't know how low and how quickly this goes. And Kadarius Toney was in the top 80. No, that's not on the big breakout trajectory, but we've seen it. And for Toney, you have the pedigree advantage, you have the year of data points advantage, and then you say this is an offense that may not support much. So Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, is at risk to not finish in the top 80 this year. He might not finish in the top 100. And that's not to say he's a bad player, but it's to say Kenny Golladay still around. Kadarius Toney is going to be ahead of him, and they still have Sterling Shepard. I mean, this is a packed depth chart with a quarterback probably not lifting the lid for 2 top 24, top 30 guys. So one might survive. Good thing they don't have a lot of tight ends in the mix. But I just think that, if there is an answer here, it's Kadarius Toney. I have him a lot higher in the rankings. And I just think there's a lot more positivity if you're going to create positivity in this pairing right now. It doesn't mean Wan'Dale Robinson a couple of years from now might not hit a top 30, 36 season. I just don't think the ceiling's big. And I definitely don't think the floor is very high this year.
So I know you mentioned George Pickens as someone that was overlooked for the selection of Wan'Dale Robinson. And I know, Chad, when you was on, you mentioned George Pickens as your wildcard selection. Open question to you both, Chad and Katie, about going back in time. Let's say that Pickens landed on the Giants. How would that make you feel? Would it be better than his landing spot with the Steelers? Would it be the automatic alpha that yours? Would you be more interested, or is it just the fact that Daniel Jones is there? It's killing everything.
Well, again, it's probably a 1-year thing. I mean, quarterback, the situational effect. Yes, I trust the Steelers more than I trust the Giants. And they did draft Pickett. We'll see what that kind of looks like. But I always go back to, you look at the pedigree. So he went in the second round, Pickens did, and that's not great, but he does have an elite profile by my measures, which means you give him a pass if he goes in round 2. So I give him a pass. He went round 2. I like it that he went to the Steelers instead. But again, Daniel Jones, if he doesn't work out, he's going to be out. So either he works out and survives and thrives, or you say they're getting somebody else. Now, I do wonder if the Giants are going to be just searching in the weeds for a while at quarterback. It's been a while since Eli, basically. And so I just, so if the draft pedigree was similar, we'd probably get a little bit more of a discount, is what I would say. Like if he went to the Giants, instead of, that 112 to 202 in Superflex, maybe 203, 204, 205 would be the reality for Pickens. You get just a little bit more juice, a little bit more profit potential there in rookie drafts. That probably might be the only difference if he had landed with the Giants.
Yeah, and the only thing that I've got to say about Pickens, the Steelers have done a great job identifying wide receivers. That's one thing, and so I'm kind of excited. That gives them a nudge. If the Giants would have drafted him instead, I probably would fade him a little bit more in rookie drafts and still be interested, but not quite as interested.
And we'll wrap up on Wan'Dale on you, Matt. After the public beatdown of Wan'Dale by Chad and Katie, how are you moving him down your ranks?
Well, I mean, the only thing I can maybe throw back is obviously this is a new coaching staff, new GM. Does that not factor into that they've gone out and selected the guy? If they've already got a guy that we say is pretty similar, that profile's pretty similar to Toney, is that any kind of indication maybe that they've gone after this guy because they see him maybe as a better fit into their scheme? No? The guys disagree now.
Can you stop saying what you're selling?
The silence was deafening there.
That was brilliant. We'll have to clip that. That was amazing. No, we'll move on to the other wide receiver, the other wide receivers in this wide receiver room. Kenny Golladay, I mean, he came with a big price tag. It wasn't ever going to hit that price tag, but wide receiver 72 is his current market value. I think that's pretty laughable. Is he still a wide receiver to own for the Giants, or as predicted, is it that there's no wide receiver to own for the Giants?
I got him about neutral. I have him in the 70s in my rankings, so I'll call that valuation fair. I think it's interesting that, I mean, like you said, he gets that big deal. He came into the NFL at like 23 to 24 years old. He was pretty old, and then I actually thought he was on a pretty good trajectory there at wide receiver 24, wide receiver 13 a couple years ago, peaking, and then he gets this big contract and just falls completely flat. The problem is kind of the infrastructure and the ceiling aspect that Katie and I have mentioned with the Giants of just, they got a lot of good enough targets. Kadarius Toney comes in with round 1 pedigree. That's going to be, that's a hindrance to Kenny Golladay. And then you say, Daniel Jones, can he be a facilitator for strong production? Critical questions. And that's where situation in redraft, and you're talking a short-term lens in dynasty, really come to fruition. And for Golladay, when you fall off at 27, 28 years old, like he did going into the 30s, this past year, he was wide receiver 91 in adjusted points per game. That is tough to rebound from because he's not 24, 25. Like, this isn't Juju Smith-Schuster at a much younger age and saying, he could bounce back, and then he goes to the Chiefs. So this is a far different situation for the bounce back probabilities, in my opinion. So I was never the biggest Golladay fan, and now I think the situation is set up for a bunch of guys to finish on that team between wide receiver 40 and 80. They might have 3 guys at wide receiver that do that, and all of them kind of feel unstartable-ish for most of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the distribution, if you look at the 280 targets that are out there, and again, that's 3 years of Daniel Jones. Even if he increases it to 320, 330 range, that's still not 100 targets for Kenny Golladay. I would imagine we had 53 for Tony last year. I would imagine he's going to get targeted a little bit more, let's say 75 targets. And then, as Chad mentioned, there's other mouths to feed. Galladay's only put up 2 seasons where his best season was 70 receptions, and then the second best was 65. And both of those seasons, he was over 1,000 yards and would be fantasy relevant. I mean, for the price tag, he's worth the stash, but I'm not just scrambling all over the place to acquire him either.
Matt, we'll throw it back to you for the final say on Golladay. Is he someone that's still on your radar?
I mean, it was a running joke, wasn't it, last year that I was so excited when we got Kenny Golladay, and yeah, let's just say it's not worked out quite how I'd imagined it. And I mean, to me, it just feels like it was too bad to be true. I mean, can history repeat itself? Can we have another such a bad season? But I mean, the guys have laid out great points. That the fact that we are still trying to find wide receivers in the NFL draft, everything's pointing towards the fact that maybe this is a miss on Kenny Golladay. We've paid him that huge contract, and yeah, it's not looking great. I still believe he can improve on what he did last year, but let's be honest, that's not saying anything, is it? I mean, what he did last year was unbelievable in all the wrong kind of ways. So, like Katie said, maybe if you can get him at that current value, I'd maybe take him and stash him and just hope that he can have maybe an improved season next year with Daniel Jones obviously competing to save his job. But yeah, long term, I think it's the dream is over for Kenny Golladay for me.
Yeah, one final point is, let's look at this base level, which is he was a free agent available to everyone, and the team that previously had him for that rookie contract period said, no thanks, pass. Yeah. So I mean, it sounds simple, but most of the time in those situations, I look, and when they change teams like this, just not traded, not Brandon Cook style, but just let go, it's not a good look. That they know that was maybe the perfect storm, and paying him a lot of money like the Giants did, or like any big free agent gets, a lot of times it doesn't work out. And I think if you go into free agency with that skeptical lens and say, is this an outlier scenario that could buck that trend? If you go into it with skepticism of saying it's probably going to get worse, then I think you can maybe avoid, dynasty-wise or fantasy-wise, some overvaluation of players that are changing teams.
Yeah, I think Golladay is in a perfect situation in Detroit with Matt Stafford, someone that's going to throw it up and give his guys a chance. I'm not huge on the fit with Daniel Jones. Is there a chance that something happens after this year where he gets better QB? Yeah, but I think by that time he's 29, maybe 30, and his body type, it's not one that's going to age as well as some of the smaller, smoother dudes. So we'll move on and talk about tight end now again. Matt, you've ended up on a tight end question, which I don't know who plans these shows, but take it away.
It almost seems too perfect. But yeah, moving on to the tight end position, obviously we selected Daniel Bellinger in the NFL draft, but to me it looks like Ricky Seals-Jones is going to step in and be a starter for 2022. Obviously we know Evan Ingram's moved on and gone to the Jags. He showed flashes last year with Washington, but now he's on his 5th team in 6 years, so that would be my concerns with Ricky Seals-Jones. But what do you think his ceiling could be in 2022, as I say, being that starter for the Giants? And I'm expecting just great words, because we've spoken glowing terms about these New York Giants players. So I'm expecting you both to be in love with Ricky Seals-Jones, right?
I just, again, I don't have a whole lot of faith in him. He was a wide receiver in college. He has not eclipsed 34 is the maximum receptions he's had in his entire career. They're looking at, MFL has projected him for 46 receptions, which would be around 439 yards and 3 touchdowns on 72 targets. That's not horrible, but that's not moving the needle. That's not a tight end that I want to own. Even, start 2 tight ends, all tight ends that are starters should be owned. But man, I wouldn't want to be the one that has to have him. You wouldn't know when to start him.
Yeah, I think it's a 2 tight end conversation here for just Giants tight end globally here for this year. And Seals Jones, he's flashed a little bit, but let's face it, he was a 5-star guy who flamed out quickly and basically had to change positions to stay in the NFL. And I think it was Arizona where he had maybe a run of a month or 2 where it's like, oh, this guy is kind of a streamer. And but he's been off the map for a little bit. And now he's coming back to, again, a team with a lot of targets. I think that's going to be one limitation here. So 2 tight end, like Katie said, he's got to be rostered. But if it's super shallow and you're maybe rostering 3-4 tight ends and it's 2 tight ends still, it gets a little questionable on if you want maybe an injury away guy for another depth chart where you say there's bigger upside here. This guy might, with his ceiling, might finish tight end 25 to 35. And you say, does that do anything for anybody really? I will say one thing about Daniel Bellinger. I like the comps. I think he's one of the more interesting guys when you talk about a 30, 35, 40-man roster, 2 tight end league. You get to the 4th, 5th round. I like taking tight ends like a Daniel Bellinger, where Foster Moreau, a guy that I like over there with the Raiders, is one of his comps. Bellinger, he's athletic. He was productive. And again, I think he has enough pedigree to say he could develop into a 2023 play and someone that has developmental upside up this depth chart that frankly, no Kyle Rudolph, no Evan Ingram, they've changed over. Ricky Seals-Jones is going to be a mere placeholder this year.
Yeah, he had a couple of double-digit games last season, but I think that's what he is. I think he's a tight end too that's got the ability to be a dart throw fill-in, but with very low expectations if you're scrambling around on waivers. Matt, Seals-Jones, is he anybody you want to roster in a normal non-tight end premium league? Would he scrape in as a tight end 3, or are we being a little bit too kind?
I mean, just in terms of dynasty now, I'm not really that interested. If you play redraft, maybe it's something you could take a shot at right at the end and just hope that he has some production this year. But I'm a little bit like Chad. Bellinger's the tight end for me on the Giants that I'm the most intrigued by for dynasty. And we know tight ends maybe take a little bit longer to develop and become fantasy assets. So if you can put him on your tax squad, or like you said, if you've got deep rosters, he's the one tight end out of this group that I'm personally looking at for dynasty. I like that athleticism that he's got, and as Chad said, there's a potential role for him moving into next year.
Indeed. So we'll wrap up the Giants. We'll move on from them very swiftly, and we'll move on to the super Philadelphia Eagles. Looking for Katie's reaction. I've not had one yet, so we'll kick off at the QB position. Jalen Hurts is a guy that's quite a polarizing guy, actually. The fact that there's always this talk that he's going to lose his job. I've been lower on him than the market. But with what he's shown on the field, there is a chance that if the Eagles do move on from him after this season, that he does land a QB job elsewhere. So definitely an interesting guy. I just want to sort of go back in time and sort of get your thoughts on where he sits versus these 2021 rookies in Dynasty. So that's like Lawrence, Lance Fields, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, etc. Would it be in that group? Would it be below? Who have you got above and below on from that group?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is one that I swear, if I had a crystal ball and we could go to January and I could see how this, because I can see it extremely either way. I could see that he is the reason this Eagles passing game and offense and team don't take a step forward. I think they could win the division. I think they have the pieces. You add A.J. Brown as a critical element there, Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. I mean, these are big-time weapons. And all I say is, Jalen Hurts, are you going to mess it up? I mean, if he comes out and he throws 18, 19 touchdown passes, I mean, give me a break. Give me a break with these weapons. And they've been hand-holding him. So, but here's what I'll say. He's avoided turnovers. He did that in college. And he actually is on the success and above baseline track. When I look at, again, that quarterback touchdown interception rate ratio, he's up there. You know, he career-wise, he's right around Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, Joe Burrow so far early on in his career. He's on the success track of he should If things continue this way, it would be a surprise if he's not the starter in 2023. I think that's within him. Now, the problem is optics. You just kind of watch him and you watch this Eagles passing game and you say, that's not it. That is a limiting factor of an NFL offense. But the fact that they went all in, Goddard's still there, but they bring in A.J. Brown. I mean, big trade, big contract, and now big expectations. So obviously, if A.J. Brown doesn't stay healthy or something like that, then game off, and it could change the game. But they have built something around him. And I have him in this treacherous zone, like in the mid-teens of my rankings, where I'm basically saying I could see either way. I mean, I got Jalen Hurts right above Trey Lance, and then one spot lower than that, is Justin Fields. I don't have a good sense about those three guys in general. I think that dynasty owners chase big upside, but at quarterback, that's super risky. Super risky to just go, oh, that's going to be the next Justin Herbert. Oh, that's going to be the next Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson or whoever has actually done it for a few seasons. Super risky to anoint. And I think we're seeing it with Trey Lance, where I still say Garoppolo could be the starter this year. Don't even get me started. But I just, so Jalen Hurts has actually done something. Trey Lance, Justin Fields, they've actually shown almost nothing or even negative in those two cases. So back to the original part, though, I have Trevor Lawrence ahead of Jalen Hurts. I think 101s, Jared Goff is a prime example. You need to give 101s a lot of latitude early on. And the Urban Meyer stink is horrible. And the fact that that got out of there, and then you saw Trevor Lawrence, go back and watch the last game against the Colts. And everyone wants to say the Colts lost the game. Trevor Lawrence played well, and that team looked better. They've added around him. If they get Travis Etienne healthy, and they brought in Christian Kirk, I know a lot of people want to bang on that, but I think Trevor Lawrence is the potential cyborg game changer Justin Herbert of this whole group of like year one, year two quarterbacks. And I think he gets a pass. The 101 part, and just to go back to Jalen Hurts, again, I can see it going either way. And I think it's set up that he better show and he better be a positive contributor to that passing game. Because if he's not, we know they have the capital. And we know now with A.J. Brown, good weapons, this is going to be an appealing spot for them to potentially entice a veteran quarterback or go into probably a more lucrative rookie class in 2023.
I'm in a startup draft right now, and Trevor Lawrence went at 20th overall. Jalen Hurts went at 21st overall. Then Justin Fields went at 24th overall. So I agree with Chad. He's right in that range. But you've also got guys like Russell Wilson and Matthew Stafford that are in that range. I'd rather have the savvy veteran. I'm not going to take those high risks on those young quarterbacks. I like Justin Fields a lot, but again, we haven't seen the good yet. Zach Wilson is still a big question mark. Mac Jones has a capped upside because he doesn't have the rushing. He doesn't have that Konami code. So I think that Hurts has better weapons around him for success and is leaning towards that way, but he still has a long way to go. The reason he's fantasy relevant is his legs. He still will get those turnovers and his interceptions, and
it's one read and out. It's one read and run. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, exactly.
One read and run. I mean, it's his escape hatch, and he's not learning to be a passer. Katie, don't you just wish he was cheaper? Like if Jalen Hurts was like QB 18, 19, it feels like a more palatable point where you get him around Tua, somewhere like that, and you go, well, I can buy into the rushing. But the fact that we don't even know if he's going to be a 2023 starter, there's a lot of guys around him, like you mentioned, those veterans, that you just don't have to take that risk in your, if you waited on quarterback, he's your QB1. I mean, that would scare the boots off me from a dynasty team build or just going into the season where you could have nothing. You could have a backup in 12 months.
Right. And you look at guys like Baker Mayfield, Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. Those guys were all adorned before they made it. And now you look, Baker Mayfield, we couldn't even give him away in this startup draft. And Jameis Winston, and Marcus Mariota. So it's just a fad right now. It's a phase that everybody's going through, and time will tell. But it's very hard to pull a Josh Allen complete 180. He worked his tail off. quarterbacking, I say this analogy a lot. Sports, a lot of people think practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent. A good habit is something that you don't need to break, and bad habits, whatever they are, he's got something in there that he needs to work on. It's so hard to get that habit out of your system to where the new habit takes over. I mean, if habits weren't so hard, we'd all be like perfect bodies and perfect health, and nobody would smoke and nobody would drink.
Bad habits, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's hard to overcome and to make it common second nature for you without even thinking. So even if he does continue to build, it still could take a while.
Two quick things, and I know Katie hit on it slightly there, but Mac Jones, I think you have to take Jalen Hurts over Mac Jones just from the upside standpoint. That Mac Jones might mire in the QB2 zone for, like a super flex floor, but that's probably not going to affect your team as much as Jalen Hurts could finish top 5 this year fantasy wise, and he could still lose his job. I mean, we could have a clear divide between fantasy and real life. And then Zach Wilson, he was so bad in year 1 that it kind of scares me. Like, I understand look at this great throw. Look at that great throw. Well, it's what you do in your middle 75% of your throws that really matter a lot for keeping your job. And they built around him too. He has a critical year coming to show big time improvement, but he doesn't have the 101 insulation from a Trevor Lawrence or someone like that. So I think Zach Wilson is the guy that scares me in this zone a lot. And I think Mac Jones is safe, but it's almost like you're just eschewing risk and just going like, oh, I want to be vanilla and I want to make sure I don't miss. Well, you're not going to miss, but I don't know if you're going to hit either.
The one saving grace that Zach Wilson has, a lot of times you can't tell what's between the quarterback's ears, but I know somebody that knows the kid, and he is a bookworm, and I know you have to at least be that if you're going to improve. And he studies, he works. They've put weapons around him. So yes, there's a lot of question marks and a high risk, but his price tag, he's the least expensive of all the guys that we've mentioned. He's even less expensive than Mac Jones in a startup draft.
Indeed. And Jalen Hurts, he's a guy that I just really want to root for as an Eagles fan, but from a fantasy point of view, I just still can't get on board. I think if he does flame out this season, let's say the Eagles finish 9-8, miss the playoffs, will he get a starting job next season with that class coming in? I'm not totally sure. So we'll move on. We'll talk about the running backs next, and over to you, Matt.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to the running backs and Miles Sanders. Had a really impressive rookie season, finishes the RB14. But after that, it's just been declined, really. It's 2 seasons where he's really struggled. He's now entering a contract year, 25 years old, currently ranked RB29 on Keep Trade Cut. So I'm just wanting to know, what are you doing with Miles Sanders in Dynasty? Is he somebody that you may be looking to buy at that price point, or are you just looking to move off? We know the RB cliff that we always talk about, that's approaching for him. As I say, the contract situation as well makes it even more confusing. So yeah, where are you at with Miles Sanders?
I think that a lot of people view him or tried to view him as the RB1, and that never happened. And I don't know that ever will. He's a good RB2 though, and you need depth on your rosters in Dynasty. And so for his price, as long as he's being valued in that vein and you're not paying RB1 numbers, I'm fine with buying and he is a good startable running back. He's one of those steady guys. You don't have the bell cow, but you also don't have necessarily a stinker. And I think that he can put up decent numbers from week to week, which is enough to help you win your fantasy week, and that's important.
I think he can easily be, I always think kind of in the next 2-3 years, like how do things look for Miles Sanders? And we've seen some running back 1 moments, but I think we've also seen with Kenny Gainwell, with Boston Scott, I mean, they've looked for a lot of reasons to say Miles Sanders is not the guy. And we know what that means, the guy, the feature back, and they've really mixed him in and out. And part of that may be, let's go all the way back to Penn State. I think he had 1 year, and yes, Saquon Barkley was there, but Miles Sanders basically had 1 year of good usage to prove his 5-star worth. And then he comes into the NFL, a lot of this committee stuff. I think a lot of people see, and myself included, see big time flashes from Miles Sanders. It's like, well, why don't they give him more? Well, they've been around him for years, so they probably have a sense of, if, we don't want to use too much, we don't want to squeeze the toothpaste tube a lot because we might lose some of that dynamic stuff. He might, the durability factor. He's not been a guy since high school that's really had high workload. So you keep doing that. Now he's 25, 26 years old, and it kind of perpetuates itself. I do think he can go and be a 1A somewhere else if the Eagles move on from him, but there's a lot of PPR siphoning here. And the price point is okay. I mean, you look at outside the top 25 or so at running back, and you don't see a lot of for sure 1As or starters this year. So I think it's palatable. But I guess one thing I would say is he's not too far away from James Conner, and those are pretty divergent profiles of upside and expectations over the next couple of years. So it feels fine, but it also feels like he has no market insulation. And at 26, 27, unless he has some top 12 season, it's not going to get better. So when you talk about pivoting to a James Cook or Rashad White or Brian Robinson, or, it sounds like you're pivoting really low. But you could probably get one of those guys, that earlier second round pick equivalency, and you can get something else. That might be an insulation point if you have Miles Sanders as your running back 4 or 5 on a depth chart.
Yeah, personally, I don't think he's going to be it for the Eagles. I think, like you mentioned, they've made plenty of moves to try and move off him. They did avoid drafting a running back of note, which is decent. But if you're thinking that offensive scheme, that's come from the Colts, where in Jonathan Taylor's rookie season, there was mixing in Naeem Hines and the other dude there, whatever he's called, Jordan something. But yeah, I think Miles Sanders, if he was on another team, yes. He actually reminds me a little bit of Tony Pollard, the fact that they're going back-to-back keep trade cut. I probably fancy Tony Pollard over Miles Sanders, just with that pathway to being the alpha in Dallas next season. Is that possible, Katie? That Pollard's the starter in Dallas next season?
I doubt it. I think that if anything, they'll bring somebody else in.
Well, let's put that one to bed then. So we'll move on to
Pollard hasn't shown he's a lead back. Everyone wants to say Tony Pollard's better than Ezekiel Elliott and like run Zeke out of town and all this stuff. Pollard is, he has less stuff he's shown since starting college than Antonio Gibson. And everyone wants to assume that people will view Tony Pollard like a 250 touch back. Be careful. Be careful anointing a guy that's never done it.
I think there is caution, but I also fancy him over Miles Sanders because you don't know his landing spot next season. It's not going to be the Eagles. So that'll be just my person. I'm the Eagles fan sticking up for the Cowboys player. Let's move on quickly. Next up, we've got AJ Brown, obviously the big signing for the Eagles this offseason. Pretty cheap actually for what they paid for him compared to some other deals, but just want to know, his move to Philly, is it positive, negative, or is it neutral based on where he was ranked before to where he is now?
I have him about the same. Maybe he moved down a slot or two. I'm kind of looking at my rankings and what happened with him. I'm gonna ruffle a little feathers because I know AJ Brown is one of Katie's guys. And this is only from a value perspective. So just know, like AJ Brown, the player, I like him the player. I like him the NFL player. I will say this. When I started looking at career arcs and I put that right next to my rankings, it becomes very easy to spot something that doesn't make sense. And something that doesn't make sense is AJ Brown, globally, a lot of people view him in that wide receiver 4, 5, 6 kind of zone, within the top 10. And I keep coming back to, has this guy done enough to warrant that? Yes, he's younger than some of the big time producers at 27, 28, 29. I get that. He has more of a production profile than some of these guys being anointed for what they've done through a season or two. But his peak season so far is wide receiver 12 in adjusted points per game. He's got 2 other seasons in the 25, 30, 35 kind of range. That's not enough, in my opinion, to be top 5, 6. And now you go to Jalen Hurts. You've got Goddard, you've got Devonta Smith. I think that's a lot of competition for targets. Katie talked about Daniel Jones. Is he going to be high volume? I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be high volume. This has to be big breakaway touchdowns and a decent number of them for AJ Brown, I think, to really reach a ceiling that justifies the cost that he currently is. So I like the player. I don't like the cost for what his profile is so far. If they get a quarterback change, and it doesn't work out this year, but I just don't think that connection of Jalen Hurts to AJ Brown is going to be something that's a mid or high wide receiver one. It hasn't happened through 3 years, and that's connected to Ryan Tannehill. So I really think, like, I have him outside the top 10. I think that's a perfectly palatable price point, but obviously that's below the market. So I think, again, I just don't know if the ceiling for the whole passing game is going to be high enough when you consider strong talents in Brown, Smith, and Goddard to all survive at their relative price points.
Yeah, and I'm not so high on AJ Brown that I'm delusional. I'm not buying him anywhere. And Ryan Tannehill, you just to talk about volume. Tannehill had 357 completions in 21, 333 in 2020. Jalen Hurts, 295 last year. So that's, even if everything stays the same and Hurts increases a little bit and Tannehill increases a little bit, there's more mouths to feed in Philadelphia too, with Goddard and Smith. So I think this is a downtick for AJ Brown, but I think he's being overvalued. Like Chad said, he's being overvalued because he's a young wide receiver. That's a dangerous thing. Anytime you anoint somebody before they've done it on a consistent basis, I'd rather have a guy like Chris Godwin or Mike Evans or an older guy, an Amari Cooper, in that same bucket of points that you're going to get. If you play Moneyball and you just look at the points, how am I going to make that up? You can get guys, even a Hunter Renfrow can put up those kind of points that AJ Brown has been putting up, but at a much cheaper price because he's a Rodney Dangerfield.
Matt, where have you got AJ Brown ranked? I know you was high on him before he's moved to Philly. Has he dropped a little for you?
Yeah, I think I've got him around that 7-8 mark. I just, like both Chad and Katie have spoke about, I just feel that the situation that he's now moved to in Tennessee, it was, although an offense that you'd say doesn't throw the ball a ton, it was built around Derrick Henry. The fact that he goes out to Philly now competing for targets alongside Goddard and Devontae Smith, like we spoke about, and then adding in the risk of the quarterback play as well, not knowing what the situation is going to look like. Is Hurts going to take a step forward? Are we going to look at another rookie quarterback next year? There's just a lot of red flags for AJ Brown. Then, like Chad said, really, and Katie, the production, it's not something that really blows you away when you look at it. Yeah, the wide receiver 12 finish is obviously great, but it's just hard for me to get too excited about AJ Brown given the situation that he's in and like the guys have spoke about, the lack of production that we've seen on a whole.
Indeed, we're going to keep it a wide receiver and we're going to throw it quickly back to you, Matt.
Yeah, so Devontae Smith, like I just mentioned, another guy that could be competing for targets alongside AJ Brown. Showed some real great flashes in his rookie season, looked really good at times. I'm interested to know, comparing him to this incoming rookie class, the 2022 class, just looking at Keep Trade Cut, they've got Drake London, Burks, Wilson, and Williams above Devontae Smith. Do you agree with that, or do you think maybe Devontae Smith may be a little bit undervalued at the moment?
Yeah, I have him right there. I have him behind those 4 rookie wide receivers. I think when you look at the upside, the possibility to control a passing game, Drake London has that, and he has top 10 pedigree. I don't think that's a very competitive point. I'm a big fan of London's. Treylon Burks basically needs to replicate 70, 80 something % of AJ Brown, at a rookie contract cost, and the Titans will be happy. So we'll see about that. Jameson Williams, top 12 pedigree, goes to a situation that I think could be wide open in terms of targets when you look over the next couple of years. And for his development, huge upside with Jameson Williams. And then Garrett Wilson, strong pedigree again. I'm not the biggest fan of his, but you say that profile, if he's the goods, likely takes over a passing game. And with Devonta Smith, I really think AJ Brown coming over with more of an alpha profile, this is tough because Smith is a guy that year one, I wasn't a big fan, but he got first round pedigree and he ends up wide receiver 36 or so in adjusted points per game, which puts him on the strong success track. Now your logical brain has to flip over and say, we got a question at quarterback. This isn't exactly, finishing wide receiver 36 with Patrick Mahomes. And, like there's a lot of difference here. And so you say, and then what do? They splash the pot, and it could be Jalen Reagor related, but they say, we need Batman and we have a Robin. And I think the concern is now you have a limited ceiling. And unless they get an assassin at quarterback where they fuel 2 top 16, 20, 24 guys at wide receiver, Smith is going to have a limited ceiling. So I think you do have to look at him in more of deeper formats where you start 3, 4, 5 wide receivers. Devonta Smith is a very nice, high floor, reasonable ceiling profile for the next few years, kind of locked in, especially if quarterback plays better there. But I just think that if you just look at year one, oh, look at that really nice season, and ignore all this ancillary stuff that says, the ceiling isn't quite as good. He's probably not going to take a leap to the top 12, top 16 this year. Then you look a little differently at Devonta Smith than I think you historically, on the macro would.
Yeah, I agree with Chad. I would have him in that same range. I might take him ahead of Jameson Williams only because I think that he's going to be off to a slow start recovering from his injury. And I think that there will be a buy low window for him later on. But I agree that right there with Traylon Burks, after Traylon Burks, Drake London, and Garrett Wilson right in there.
Yeah, I'm just going to do that with you then, Katie. That's exactly my thought process as well. So we've agreed on something, an Eagles and a Cowboys fan agreeing. That's nice.
There's still hope.
How about you? How about you, Matt? Compared to the rookies, has he moved for you with the arrival of AJ Brown? Have you got any of these rookies above Devontae Smith now?
I believe I've got 2 of them above. I'm a little bit lower on Garrett Wilson than I feel like consensus is. He's the one that I feel them both pretty similar to me. They're kind of the same range. And then I've got Jameson Williams and Traylon Burks above him. But I do agree, obviously, like we've touched upon with AJ Brown being there. I feel like that's going to take a lot of the targets that Smith saw last year. Obviously, only really competing with Dallas Goedert in terms of top end talent in terms of receiving. So, I think there has to be a knock against him again, circling back to the QB play moving forward as well. That's still a question mark. So, all in all, while I do think he is, to be honest, I've grown to love him a little bit more than I did when he came in. I know, Kev, you'll probably remember when he was selected, really didn't like the landing spot, was super down on him, but I kind of came around onto him last year in his rookie season. But still, as I say, moving forward, I do have my concerns, and I feel like these rookies have got more potential than what Devontae Smith currently has.
Indeed. I'm very nervous about this final question because I know the Fantasy Wildcard boys, we're a big fan of this guy, Dallas Goedert. Just want to throw it open to you both, Chad and Katie. Do you think that Goddard, if everything does go right for him, if he hits as high as he could, has he got that top 3 dynasty potential as a ranking after this season if he crushes and has a monster career?
I don't see it happening with Jalen Hurts. I don't think he can feed a monster season for Dallas Goedert. I think that Dallas Goedert with a different team could get up in that top 3 as a tight end, but I think that Hurts is what's going to hurt him and hold him back.
Yeah, I think he's a really interesting name, and I actually had some clarity on the tight end position because I've said before, you need the guy. In fantasy, you want one of those difference makers, and I think there's 6 of them. I think there's 6 easy answers. That might be consensus and chalk, but when you get beyond the Pitts, Andrews, Hawkinson, Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, so that's kind of the. Those might not be on 6 teams in your league. They might be on 3 or 4. You never know. But I think if you don't have one of those guys, in my opinion, there's 2 other guys that give you a chance. They give you a chance of the next 10 guys, I don't really care. I think there's 2 that separate, Dalton Schultz and Dallas Goedert. The 2 guys I trust the most to say, if they splash and can basically pull you even with some of those guys, some of those big 6 I talked about. I think Goddard's in that zone. I like Dalton Schultz's situation a little better for the short term. But with Dallas Goedert, you're talking about a guy that in the first 4 years, and I believe 2 of those years that he had a top 12 adjusted points per game season was with Zach Ertz, a record setter on the same depth chart, which blows my mind when you start thinking about how Dallas Goedert now maybe doesn't have the benefit of quarterback, but the fact that he's very good and that he was a tight end 2 on his own team and yet was still producing and said, I'm getting mine. It's basically what he said early in his career with that production. But now he's 27 and you say, is this going to be the year where he breaks through with his best season? Yeah, he's kind of mired in that low tight end 1 range. So I think he's a smashing value and a guy that you would love to have in your tight end 2 spot in a 2 tight end league. In 1 tight end, though, I think Schultz has a little more upside and floor combination for this year. Goddard, probably not as much a probability to break into the top 5 or 6. But when you look at the next 2 or 3 years, the fact that he's 27, the fact that you might have Kelsey, maybe Waller aging out a little bit, that I think he's in a really good spot of saying, who's really, is Cole Kmet or Pat Freiermuth or somebody, whoever else is out there, I think he has a huge edge over all those guys. So I think somewhere in the tight end 7, 8, 9 range is appropriate. I think he's 8 or 9 in like just ADP or on Keep Trade Cut or something. So I think I'm higher than the market, and I think he's one of the select few where you say, yeah, instead of Hunter Henry or Zach Ertz or just a lot of guys in the next 10, you say it's worth prioritizing Dallas Goedert, because I do think he has one of the rare profiles on what he's done so far, but the untapped ceiling of what could be to come.
Absolutely love that. I can't believe I'm getting so excited about Goddard and Schultz. I mean, I've kind of got a top 7, sometimes a top 8 when I wake up, and both those guys you mentioned are in that as well. So, closing thoughts, Matt, on Goddard. I know you're probably a bigger fan than me, actually. You've got me in every league.
I wish I did, but I really like Dallas Goedert. I feel like for years I've obviously stuck behind Zach Ertz. I was in a really frustrating situation, but just seeing what happened when Zach Ertz got traded, the fact that between week 7 and 17, I believe it was the tight end 5 in that window, jumping up from, I believe, tight end 15 around that range before that. Just goes to show the opportunity that opened up for him, which was exciting. Obviously, the fact now that AJ Brown come in, that's kind of going to take away a few of those targets, you feel. But on the whole, as a talent, really like him. Again, we've circled back every time we've spoken about these pass catching weapons, that the QB play is the king in this discussion, really, and it's going to be interesting to see what Jalen Hurts does moving forward. But we're all hoping he can take that step forward, help make these assets brilliant in terms of fantasy. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting season, I think, for the Eagles as a whole and in terms of fantasy.
Perfect. So that brings us to the end of this part of the Streamathon. It also brings us to the end of your stint as well, Chad and Katie. Thank you so much for coming on. Before you go, please let the audience know where they can find you and anything you've got in the works at the moment.
Sure. You can find me at FF_Skyler399 on Twitter. I'm on the Under the Helmet regular show every week. And catch me tomorrow on the Devi Summit. It's a streaming podcast all day. I think I'm on around 4:00 in the afternoon with the Ask Me Anything. You can find it on my Twitter feed. I've been retweeting it, but Brandon Lejeune has put together a bunch of great Devi minds. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's also for charity. I want to thank you guys for doing what you do, and I made sure to contribute, but hopefully you raise a ton of money, and thanks so much for having me on.
You can find me, Chad Parsons, over at uthdynasty.com. I record hundreds of premium and the weekly show with Katie shows a year there. I also host the Football Guys Dynasty show with Jordan McNamara, and things are heating up there, so can't recommend it enough. And got a trade calculator, rookie draft guide, all of that good stuff for UTH. We're kind of getting past the rookie season, so I would just charge everybody to check those final roster spots, make sure you know when waivers are starting, little basic mechanical things in your league, because you might be in a few leagues and they might all be different. Some are closed down till August for making moves, and others might start 2-3 days after your rookie draft complete. And you know what? A lot of people, they get that first email of 101 being selected, and like, oh, I guess that's drafting. So just the basics of keeping track of your leagues and your portfolio this time of year, this ambiguous next couple months before things really get going. So I would just charge everyone to make sure you're crossing the T's, dotting the I's, because it can be easy to lose track of something that you missed that first waiver run, and you might see 4 or 5 players where it's like, I wanted in on someone like that. So uthdynasty.com and over on Twitter at Chad Parsons NFL. Thanks so much, guys.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch you very soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Right, Matt, let's get out of here. Let's get on to the next stream. But first, before we do, it is the end of the second quarter in terms of our Streamathon. We're halfway there, as Bon Jovi said. You can see the link below. Please do donate if you can. The next stream is due to start in a couple of moments' time at Fantasy Wildcard on Twitter and our YouTube channel. So thank you very much for the donations so far. I think we're hovering around 50% as well. So we're halfway through the stream. We're halfway through our target as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes' time.
See you soon.